Part 42. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 420. During the days when Luo Guang left the Lighthouse Country, after the Lighthouse Country had made preparations, President Seymour finally responded to public demands and held a press conference on the Savannah incident. President Seymour, dressed in a suit and tie, appeared at the White House press conference and began to explain the Savannah incident. Leon also attended the press conference, standing below and acting as a bodyguard with other agents. Good evening. More than a week ago, our compatriots, our lives and the freedom we cherish were deliberately attacked by a biochemical terrorist temporarily named Beekeeper. As the president spoke, the iconic bee cartoon image of the Beekeeper organization appeared on the projection screen next to him. Then switch pictures. In the picture, you can see a small truck with this cartoon image printed on it appearing near the landmark building of Savannah City, the Mercy Hospital. This is not a composite photo, but a picture cut out after the helicopter sent the small truck there and hung a camera to shoot a video. The enemy has released a biochemical virus called the Fury virus in Savannah, Georgia. Many people have unfortunately been infected with the virus. They may be people from all walks of life, they may have become parents, they may be your relatives and friends. The people in the entire city and surrounding areas have suddenly turned into zombie-like monsters under the despicable and evil acts of these biochemical attackers, biting their teeth at their relatives and friends, spreading fear. Then, the tragic situation of Savannah appeared on the projection screen. Pictures of vehicle crashes, raging fires, and infected people gnawing on creatures caused exclamations from reporters present. We can't believe the tragedy before our eyes. We feel extremely sad and angry. The large-scale massacres of these terrorists are intended to lead our country into chaos and regression. But their conspiracy will not succeed, and our country is still strong. President Seymour mobilized his emotions to infect the audience and announced, the former Anti-Umbrella Institute once again took on the responsibility and successfully developed the virus antidote in the shortest time. This time we have a surprising discovery. Please look at the screen. The projection screen played a video of the infected gradually returning to normal after receiving the antidote. The reporters wrote furiously, and the flashlights kept flashing, recording all of this. After seeing that the reporters basically stopped what they were doing, President Seymour continued his speech, but the enemy did not give up their evil plan, but launched another attack, intending to destroy the infection blockade and quarantine area set up by the military and let the virus spread. Next is the battle record of the military intercepting the two Beekeeper organization trucks. These records were provided by the BSAA, because the military did not give every soldier a battlefield recorder. Therefore, the reporters saw the military and the BSAA working together to keep the peace. This is another good topic. Some sensitive reporters did not see the FBC in the video, and they were thinking about it and preparing for the next question session. President Seymour was full of anger and sadness, and suppressed his voice and said, although the infected can turn back to human, it is not 100% successful, so let us pray for those infected tonight, pray that they can come back, return to their relatives and friends, and may God bless America. Thank you, good night. Seymour's speech was not only heard on the spot, but also by the whole country through news broadcasts and radio broadcasts, so he said good night. And this wave of speeches naturally earned him a lot of fame. Tara Sefer was not to be outdone, and immediately released his own plan, saying that he would do his best to help the victims return to society, and called on all walks of life to donate. Sam B., who once survived the tropical island of Benoi, Isle of the Dead incident, also announced that he would participate in a fundraising concert in Atlanta, Georgia as a hip-hop singer, and welcomed people from all walks of life to participate. Afterwards, the press conference entered the question and answer session, which was not broadcast, a benefit for the media to which the reporters who successfully participated in the press conference belonged. It also facilitates monitoring of press releases and preventing unexpected situations from being seen and heard by the public at the press conference. Reporter Alyssa Ashcroft, a former survivor of Raccoon City, was the first to be named and asked questions. She asked, "Mr. President, I want to ask how much the military knows about the beekeepers' organization? What actions will be taken next?" This question was expected by President Seymour's think tank, so he was able to answer immediately, saying, "According to the intelligence we have collected, the beekeepers' logo first appeared in the Harlan incident, but we have no evidence to prove that the incident was initiated by the organization. It was not until the Savannah incident that we first confirmed the existence of the biochemical terrorist organization, so we don't know much. As for the fact that members of the organization were captured alive in the death flight incident, he did not say it because it involved CIA secrets." President Seymour continued, "Next, we will do our best to investigate the situation of the organization and then completely eliminate it." Alyssa wrote down the president's words and said that she had no other questions. Generally speaking, a reporter only asks once, so she did not ask more questions, and in order not to leak the specific plan, she would not tell her reporter. Another reporter stood up and asked a question, "Your Excellency, I noticed that in the interception of the attack just now, no FBC soldiers appeared. According to the intelligence I received, is it because all FBC soldiers went to India to perform missions? This question is very harmful to the FBC." Seymour was also very dissatisfied with the FBC, but he did not add insult to injury. He replied, "This is because our military has the ability to solve this incident. The assistance of BSAA is enough. There is no need to waste manpower." The reporter would not miss this opportunity to ask questions and immediately asked, "In this case, why does Congress allocate hundreds of millions of dollars in sponsorship to the FBC? Is this a waste of taxpayers' money? We, the lighthouse country, have an obligation to contribute to our allies and world peace. Since our military can handle this kind of large-scale biochemical crisis with the assistance of the experienced BSAA, why not help India?" Really? But according to the information, the FBC sent its troops there based on the needs of India, not what you requested, Mr. President. Is this an overstep of the F.B.C's authority? Or is it a disregard for the safety of the people at home? President Seymour confirmed that the other party had malicious intentions, but it was directed at the FBC, not him. He had already said a few good things about the FBC before. The next question may drag him into a trap, so he said, "I have not received any information in this regard and do not know about it. Moreover, this press conference is about the Savannah biohazard incident and has nothing to do with the FBC, please contact FBC for consultation." After speaking, President Seymour gave the host of the press conference a look to stop him from continuing to ask questions. The annoying reporter was very discerning and immediately said, "Thank you, Mr. President, for clarifying my doubts. I have no other questions." Morgan did not attend the meeting to avoid this embarrassment, but he was already prepared and had a way to deal with this problem. The situation in India is that the spread of infection has just been controlled, and the FBC soldiers were finally released under pressure from the lighthouse country. They are heading to Europe to rest and then return home. It is worth mentioning that as soon as India brought the infection under control, it eagerly issued a press conference and took all the credit for its own army, once again enhancing the pride of its own people. Morgan was so angry that he directly put India on the blacklist of FBC services. Back at the press conference, the next few questions from reporters were all in order, without any surprises. President Seymour answered one by one, looked at the time on his watch, and said, "That's it for the questions at the press conference." After receiving the signal from the president, the host took the microphone and took the stage to announce the official end of the press conference. On the African continent, Excella and Wesker are discussing the future together in the Secret Research Institute Relics. As of today, the furious virus in Savannah City has finally been sent to this research institute by cronies. These cronies were originally guys who were called mercenaries at best, but bandits or desperados at worst. At the beginning, after they were hired by Alazek, they were deceived into injecting Sanlian strengthening potions, so in order to get the inhibitors on time, they had to obey. But with this inhibitor alone, Axela did not dare to let them know the location of the institute, so she injected these people with Plaka parasites. Here we have to mention the third-generation Plaka parasite developed under the leadership of her and Wesker, which is also the one used by those mercenaries. The development of this third-generation Plaka parasite was so fast, and naturally it was indispensable without the joint efforts of two talented researchers, Wesker and Axela. Encouraged by Luo Guang, Wesker also worked hard. He did not like to do tasks everywhere like in the game. He left the research on the Plaka parasite to Axela and her Sanlian researchers, but personally fingering. Compared with the Type 2 Plaka parasite, which solves the slow spread and photophobia weaknesses of the Plaka parasite, the original design of the Type 3 Plaka parasite is to tap the physical potential of the host and enhance the host's fighting consciousness and quality. However, at Wesker's insistence, the goal became to design a Plaka parasite that would retain the host's original appearance while improving the host's capabilities as much as possible. As for the ability to be controlled, that is basically the bottom line requirement for every Plaka parasite. The reason for such a design goal is to sell biological and chemical weapons and earn more funds for Wesker's own research. Because Irwin, who is responsible for the sale of biological and chemical weapons, reported the situation to Axela, the market for zombie dogs and HCF organization hunters provided by Wesker is getting smaller and smaller, and many potential customers do not like these unattractive appearances. Monster. The process of developing third-generation parasites is not difficult. First, the Axela research team extracted the genes of the obedient Plaka and transplanted them into the control Plaka. Then, after culturing in a special environment and Wesker's adjustments, they successfully created a new parasite Plaka Type 3. However, Plaka parasite Type 3 presents problems with host survival rates. In the human experiment for nearly a week, the researchers found that the survival rate of middle-aged and young men was close to 92%, the same as the ordinary Plaka parasites, but the survival rate of women and children was 0. And this rule also applies to canines. Despite this defect, in Axela's view, this is already a biochemical weapon that can be sold. Because the appearance has not changed much, the ability has been improved and the ability to be controlled has been maintained, these three design requirements have been met. Wesker thought the same, but as a perfectionist, he decided to optimize and test it, and then decide whether to sell it to the outside world. The opportunity for testing came soon. When Irwin's men were escorting the experimental materials, the materials resisted and escaped. It was just the opportunity to send a team of mercenaries who were all parasitized by Plaka Type 3 to pursue. The result disappointed Axela and his researchers. The team was annihilated and the enemy escaped unscathed. Wesker was not particularly surprised by this result. He thought that this team with little coordination could not even deal with Chris and Jill from the former STARS team. He was more concerned about the identities of the two escapees. According to the information Axela told him, many rats have appeared around Tri-Union recently, and they seem to be trying to find out the information of Tri-Union. Regarding Axela's suggestion to eliminate those BSAA agents, Wesker shook his head and rejected the suggestion, and instead asked her to keep a low profile for a while and just keep selling biological weapons. The reason is simple. He is not strong enough, so Wesker does not want BSAA to pay too much attention to Tri-Union and be discovered by Luo Guang, who has a close relationship with the organization. At the same time, in order to defeat Luo Guang as soon as possible, Wesker made a decision that violated the laws of his ancestors and gave up the research on the hybrid X virus. There was such a decision because Wesker found that this hybrid X virus lacked an antigen material to reduce toxicity, and no matter how it was modified, it could not be solved. As the number of tests increased, he became increasingly dissatisfied with the hybrid X virus. Instead, he found that the Plaka parasite had maintained strong plasticity and tolerance during the test, and was more suitable as a virus carrier than the virus in his body. He didn't want to be defeated by Luo Guang again. In order to overtake, he decided to change the direction of research and focus on the Plaka parasite. Although the amber parasite did not succeed, and Ada also said that it was destroyed in the helicopter crash, Wesker would not be stumped by this difficulty. He now has a preliminary plan, which is to use the control parasite as the main body, and cultivate and adjust the T. Veronica virus with the entire class system. As for the other viruses he has on hand, they will be slowly integrated into it later. In the end, Wesker's goal is to develop the Emperor-type Plaka parasite that is unique in the world and exclusive to him. Meow, I have shortened the content of the speech. Double update meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 421. Luo Guang didn't know about Wesker's decision. He was controlling his clone in the mother nest base and began to test the control range. As a result, the range of his mental power to control the clone was limited. When the blood plague clone exceeded the radius of 120 kilometers, there would be a control delay. If it exceeded 140 kilometers, the signal would be interrupted, and Luo Guang would need to move 2 steps to reconnect the clone. This distance is not short, but it is not enough for Luo Guang. He also learned one thing from this test, that is, mental control can ignore obstacles, and he can control the distant clone in the underground base. Thinking about how to solve the problem, Luo Guang called Jill and told her that he would meet her later. Then he asked Hong Huang to send him various professional books on telecommunications, mechanics, and other subjects. If there is anything in the world that can ignore distance and is everywhere, and can be received and sent all over the world, it is only radio waves such as communication signals. Wu Song's clone basically stays in a place with good signal, and there is no need to worry about signal problems. As for the base station problem, Luo Guang has opened many companies in Asia, so the signal can basically be covered in Asia, and other continents except Antarctica have companies that Spencer had hidden before, and they are now also received by Luo Guang, so the signal can also be covered. These are just his own industries, which have the strongest artificial intelligence system. The network defense of various communication companies is useless. These are the signal base stations that Luo Guang is going to borrow. So what Luo Guang has to do is to convert mental power into electrical signals, and then use the communication signals in the world to extend the control range of his mental power. Naturally, the clone also needs a device to convert special electrical signals into mental power instructions. This is just the first step. There are still problems waiting for Luo Guang, such as how to specify the electrical signals that Luo Guang converted with mental power. Otherwise, if all electrical signals are received and converted, wouldn't his clone become a mental patient? Nothing is difficult in the world, as long as there is a will. It took nearly a month for Luo Guang to finally overcome the above problems and some problems found during the research and development process alone, and then used the factory equipment in the mother nest to manufacture 3 sets of transmitters and converters at one time. This converter does not need to be carried by both parties, as long as it is within the transmission and reception range of the converter. However, this converter is not large, only the size of a watch, so it is also convenient to carry with you. Luo Guang already has a special watch, so it is also very simple to add a converter, but the converter and the original watch are 2 independent systems and do not interfere with each other. He also changed the style by the way, making the watch the size of a sports wristband and wearing it on the forearm, which is more beautiful than wearing a large watch. As for the clone on the other side, he asked Hong Huang to make another special watch according to the original style, and he decided to put the converter in a protective vest made of hardened armor, and then he stuffed the spare converter directly into the heart of the blood-plagued clone, just like a pacemaker. He also specifically asked Hong Huang to get a medical certificate that could not be more real. When Luo Guang finished the converter, Hong Huang was also busy, leaving backdoors in the networks of various communication companies around the world. After confirming that Hong Huang had finished his work, Luo Guang began to control the clone and restarted the distance test. The plane did not affect the clone's reception of Luo Guang's signal at all. The clone successfully arrived at the GIMZ training ground in South Africa, and there were no problems such as poor signal and uncontrollable problems during the journey. As soon as the clone returned to the GIMZ training ground, Victor came to find him. Hank kept his mouth shut, so he could only rely on himself to carefully diagnose and analyze the reasons why his mentor became stronger. When Hank just returned to the GIMZ South African base from the mysterious country, his combat effectiveness did not change so dramatically, and there was no problem with Hank's whereabouts in the days that followed. Although there were no surveillance cameras in the dormitory room, Victor did not think that Hank practiced some magic skills in the room and became stronger. The only suspicious time point was that Hank entered the office after the boss came back, and the two stayed in it for a total of 3 hours, 13 minutes, and 51 seconds. He specifically asked the boss's secretary Caddy to confirm that Caddy had received the order not to disturb at that time. When Hank came out of the boss's office, he had a rare smile on his face, so Victor inferred that the reason why Hank suddenly became stronger might be related to his boss. But when he finished investigating these things, his boss also left for something, so he could not ask, so Luo Guang just controlled Wu Song's clone to return to the base, and Victor came to him. After listening to Victor's analysis and inference, Luo Guang asked, "So you think the reason why Hank became stronger is because of me?" "That's right. But didn't Hank say it? The mysterious Oriental technology, called Yujingzisui, can greatly enhance the potential of the body." Luo Guang paused, observed the other party's expression, and continued, "So he returned to his physical peak with rich experience, which made you feel that Hank became much stronger." Victor shook his head and said, "Boss, although I usually focus on training, I am not an ignorant teenager or those who don't understand Oriental culture, and I won't be fooled by such words." Ninja Victor, whose real name is Makoto Suzuki, was adopted by an old man named Suzuki since he was a child and taught him various ninjutsu fighting skills. Unlike other formally certified ninjas, although Victor learned the ninjutsu from the IGA sect, his background was not orthodox and he did not obtain a certificate. However, there is no place for ninjas in today's society, because their functions have been basically replaced by the profession of agents or intelligence agents, and they are more of just a cultural symbol. So after Victor buried his adoptive father, he inherited his adoptive father's legacy and chose to join the army. However, he was disgusted by the life of a civil servant, so he left the Chrysanthemum country and went to France, where he passed the test and joined the Foreign Legion. In the end, he performed well in combat and was spotted by Umbrella. Feeling that the Foreign Legion could no longer improve its combat capabilities, Victor was invited to the USS and challenged the leader at the time, Hank, during the training period. Is it possible that Hank didn't lie? Does this so-called I Ching marrow cleansing really exist? Luo Guang would not lie, but his statement was ambiguous. Hearing the boss's words, Victor fell into silence. If he hadn't been unable to defeat the boss, he would have forced him to do so by force. Although Luo Guang guessed what Victor, who was constantly climbing the strongest mountain in front of him, was probably thinking, he would not be angry because the other person was a pure person, much better than those guys with evil intentions. "If I want to become as powerful as Hank, what should I do?" Victor expressed his thoughts. "Everyone is different. You may be better than Hank after I Ching cleansing, but you may not be as good as Hank. You can't say for sure." Luo Guang did not answer the other party's question directly. He did not think that if the other party took a red pill, he would be exactly the same as Hank in all numerical aspects. This was determined by individual differences. Victor was very confident in himself, and he was sure from the other party's words that it was his boss who made Hank stronger. Rightward arrow. What do I need to do to be as easygoing as Hank? Victor made his request again. Luo Guang saw that the other party would not give up, but he just teased the other party, because he did not hate pure people, and besides, he could control the other party with the Shinra virus, so there was no need to worry too much. The cost is heavy, he said. I don't mind. If you choose this path, your soul will serve me for the rest of your life, and you will be bound by me and lose your freedom for the rest of your life. Victor replied without hesitation, as long as I can become stronger, I don't mind. I can understand that you want to become stronger, but if you take my path, it will also cut off other ways for you to become stronger. While Luo Guang was talking, he used his clone to make the pill. The specific process is no different from the original medicine. After all, making this kind of pill is not an alchemy pill, and there is actually no technical content. After hearing the boss's words, Victor finally did not answer immediately, but was thinking about the risks involved. Luo Guang continued, you only have one chance to choose. If you give up, you can't change it again. Victor nodded, and in the end, perhaps because of Hank's success story, he chose to accept Luo Guang's conditions. There was no signing, no loyalty ceremony, etc. Luo Guang took out a black and red pill. He didn't have time to apply food coloring to the pills, so they remained their original black-red color. As soon as Luo Guang put it on the table, Victor couldn't wait to take it over. After examining it carefully, he said, can such a small pill make people stronger? Victor was surprised that he could become stronger just by relying on a small pill. It was too childish, so he had this doubt. It's really that easy to become stronger, so why bother training? I just said it before, have you forgotten? This is the I Ching marrow cleansing pill. It is not a cheap pill, it is very expensive. The red pill was eaten by Hank before, and the blue pill was destroyed by Luo Guang, so now the pill in Victor's hand is still the only precious thing in the world. Victor nodded. His boss also had a certain weight and status in his heart. Even if he could defeat Hank in some areas before, he still felt hopeless when facing his boss. Like Hank, Victor didn't use the mineral water Luo Guang brought out and just swallowed it. The pill dissolved in his stomach, and Victor passed out in the same instant as Hank. 2 hours later, he slowly woke up. Luo Guang was currently replying to an email from a company called V Club, discussing the joint launch of a digital distribution platform for video games, while also taking into account the Counter-Strike battle platform function. In terms of the strength of the network server, the company in his hands was not strong, but Luo Guang provided the other party with a mature Steam platform template, so he successfully took down the boss who couldn't count to 3 and looked like Santa Claus. How do you feel? Luo Guang asked the same question as Hank. Victor clenched his fist, stood up, and jumped again. After hitting the ceiling, he said, awesome. Luo Guang looked at the cement dust on the other person's hair, then glanced at the depression in the ceiling, and said, remember to repair the ceiling when you have time, and then go out to exercise. When others ask, they say it is company welfare, but the I Ching cleanses the marrow dan is temporarily out of stock. Yes, Lord. Victor accepted the order. Wait a minute, what did Hank say before that you taught the retainers? Luo Guang thought about what Hank had said before, and he had doubts at first, but he didn't expect that it was actually Victor who taught him. Caroline said that I lack imagination, so I went to watch cartoons. I found it quite interesting the first time I watched it, and it really inspired me. I have thought of many insidious moves recently, Victor answered with a serious face. Luo Guang didn't quite understand why Victor could think of insidious moves from cartoons, and what it had to do with the Lord's retainers, but he still changed the subject and said, okay, go test it. Victor said, but didn't move his legs. Luo Guang looked at the other party with a puzzled look, and felt the other party's hot eyes, then he understood and said, "You want to challenge me again, right?" The other party nodded. The two came to the indoor training ground and prepared for a fighting battle. Other test items were rejected by Luo Guang. He is the boss, how can he spend time with Victor? He also agreed to the other party because he wanted to take the opportunity to try remote control of the clone to fight. Others came after hearing the news. These people include the general soldiers recently recruited by Samus. They are all retired soldiers recruited by Samus and are receiving anti-biochemical on-the-job training. As soon as their instructors heard that the boss was going to fight in person, they immediately led the team over. Because the instructors knew that Samus would definitely be there, they brought the recruits with them, and they also had the excuse that they were still training. "Boss, give it your all. I want to see how good I am now," Victor would speak according to the situation, so he didn't call Luo Guang the Lord in front of everyone. Caroline said from the side, "Hey, Victor, are you getting cocky? You and I are only 60-40. I'm not the same person I used to be," Victor sneered. After he and the Lord finished fighting, the next step was to teach Caroline a lesson and get back the place. Luo Guang looked at Victor with a confident face and said, "If you want me to give it my all, it depends on whether you have the ability." As soon as the voice fell, Victor's legs exploded, rushed towards his boss, and immediately launched a storm-like fierce attack. Luo Guang controlled the clone to use both arms at the same time, slapping and blocking, and his legs launched counter-attacks from time to time, kicking the opponent away, injuring innocent onlookers. Although the clone is now in a place with good signal, Luo Guang's keen mental power still found that under this method of control, there will be a slight delay in fierce fighting, just like when he fights with others in the Counter-Strike game, there is a delay of about 50 milliseconds. Under this delay, Luo Guang is more than enough to deal with Victor, but facing Wesker, it may become his flaw. As the two guys who only look like humans get rid of the threat of light weapons bullets, without heavy firepower, close combat has become the main method for both sides to deal with each other, which can be regarded as an alternative return to nature. This problem needs to be solved. Luo Guang is thinking about the method while controlling the clone to deal with Victor's attack. Unconsciously, he is thinking on multiple lines, and his mental power has quietly increased a little. Victor was swept down by the clone's suddenly accelerated whip kick, and the boss's iron fist appeared at his neck in an instant. The point is over, and the winner is decided. Meow. It is said that when Valve wanted to build a platform, it found Microsoft, Yahoo, and Real Networks, but they were all rejected. Thanks to the Postman and Meow for the reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 422. Chapter 414 F.B.C.S. Conspiracy. Morgan was in his office, waiting for his cronies to knock on the door. Field, the adjutant and secretary's assistant, knocked on the door with the information. After receiving the order, he walked in and said, "Commander, this is the information you want." "Put it down." Morgan turned his back to Field and looked at the city scenery outside the floor-to-ceiling window. Field gently placed the document on the table, then took a few steps back and stood quietly. Suddenly, Morgan asked, "What do the legislators we have been sponsoring say?" "They said they could not prevent the resolution from being passed." "Our performance in the Savannah incident." "Is it too bad?" Morgan said what Field did not say. In fact, the MPS statement was not expressive, so they didn't know how to speak. These words were even more hurtful from a certain perspective. Morgan planned to use the FBC to build a career, so Field did not correct Morgan's statement and said in a low voice, "Yes. We have to solve Resident Evil beautifully and restore our reputation," Morgan said. Field was a little unsure, but didn't show it, saying, "What should we do? Do you have any ideas? I think the Indian side is not being kind. Anyway, we have put each other on the service blacklist. Why not expose what happened in India and speak out about our efforts in India?" Field expressed his thoughts. "This service blacklist is not published. This will not help our current situation much. If Morgan wanted to retaliate against India personally, he would accept this suggestion, but for the sake of the FBC, publicly offending a country would do more harm than good." At that time, the FBC, with the support of the lighthouse countries, obtained the command of biohazard incidents in NATO countries, which aroused the dissatisfaction of many people. Now, if other countries see an international anti-biohazard organization that dares to confront the country, they will be dissatisfied. The FBC was even less impressed. Moreover, with Congress deciding to cut FBC funding, the attitudes and assistance of other countries become even more important. Field also thought of what Morgan was worried about, so he was already prepared and said, "We don't need to take action. India has always had a large number of telesafe personnel because of the human experiments of Wilpharma Pharmaceutical Company. As long as we push it a little bit, naturally someone will announce the truth of the incident. It would be good if we could disentangle our relationship. The poor performance of the Indian Army can exactly set off the F.B.C's superior performance in the Indian Resident Evil." When Morgan thought about this, he couldn't help but think that they actually did a remarkable job in the previous Resident Evil incident, but it was because BSAA did so well that it seemed that their own organization did poorly. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Moreover, in these incidents, their mistakes allowed BSAA to avoid those pitfalls in advance, so Morgan always felt that those people's evaluation of his organization was unfair. Therefore, he had his next plan. "Field, how's it going with the Greyhounds?" The initial talks went very smoothly. Their previous sponsor stopped funding, which allowed us to take advantage of it, so they were very interested in our sponsorship. This negotiation is just to confirm the willingness to cooperate. Basically, Field shows off its financial strength, while the Greyhound organization gives its own development plan, future vision, and other things, just like Party B is promoting itself when looking for Party A to cooperate. Field reported on the discussion and continued, according to their introduction, they will continue to gather more people with the same ambitions, expand their manpower and conduct more training to prepare for the next time. Morgan turned to look at the other party and said, "The right choice. They rushed out to create a biohazard just because they got the T virus. The timing was too early. The Greyhound organization was basically the first biochemical terrorist attack organization. It was naturally targeted by all parties, so it only carried out an attack and was beaten to the ground, with more than half of its members lost. So the Greyhound organization has been quiet lately, without any action." Field said, "But it's just for recruitment and training, as well as other miscellaneous expenses such as food, accommodation, etc. Is the price of hundreds of millions of dollars too much? I think the purpose of the other parties asking for this money must be more than that. There should be other plans that I haven't told you." Us. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, "Do we really need to use these terrorists? If they are discovered, it will be a huge blow to the FBC. It would be better to use this financial cooperation to fish for law enforcement and catch them all. This will also work. Improve the reputation of our organization." The reason why Morgan wanted to find the Greyhound organization was to cause a big problem that was difficult to solve and create problems for BSAA. This biochemical terrorist organization is real. If something unexpected happens, as long as the funding supply is cut off and relevant clues are cleared, no one will be able to trace it. The person responsible for the investigation will not take the initiative to trace too many things behind it. He now has a new biochemical virus in his hands, which was independently developed by his collaborator Sanley and Company. It is called T-Iwan virus. This is a new virus that combines the T virus, Harlan virus, and Abyss virus. Its infected people are more aggressive than those infected with other biochemical viruses. They will destroy and assimilate any creatures they see, and they still have a certain degree of intelligence and will actively use human weapons. After all, Morgan is not going to destroy the world, so the matching virus vaccine and antidote are also being studied together. He will only officially launch the plan after the vaccine and antidote are developed. This plan is mainly divided into 3 steps. The first step is to let the Greyhound organization use the T-Night Abyss virus to create a biochemical crisis in a designated place. The second step is to introduce BasedonaMovie to the scene, and then leak intelligence to let the Greyhound organization cause trouble to BasedonaMovie and affect the other party's performance. The third step is that FBC enters the scene with the antidote, takes over the command of the poorly performing BasedonaMovie, and eliminates the biochemical crisis incident and the Greyhound organization in one fell swoop, winning a great victory. Morgan reviewed the plan in his mind and looked at his confidant who was worried, and said, "Destroying a half-crippled organization that has no ability to continue to do evil will not improve the evaluation much, so why not use the opponent completely before solving it? The higher the value of the enemy, the more sense of achievement it will be to solve it, and the more beneficial it will be to improve the reputation of FBC." Morgan cared about Field and continued, "Be careful about the negotiation, it is better to be slow than to expose your identity." It was precisely because of the fear of being discovered that the anti-biochemical organization and the biochemical terrorist organization were cooperating that Morgan asked his only confidant to negotiate. In this way, even if something really happened, he could push the other party out to take the blame for the organization and ensure that FBC would not collapse. I know Field didn't want to be sacrificed. It was July. In addition to the completion of the development of the Rage virus vaccine, there was another thing, that is, the figure of the Beekeeper, a biochemical terrorist attack organization, appeared in front of everyone more and more frequently. Barbuk 69 knew. The previous press conference of the Savannah incident in the Lighthouse State had already classified the Beekeepers as a terrorist organization, and the draft proposed at the United Nations General Assembly also passed this characterization. The cartoon anthropomorphic bee image was also banned worldwide. But with the passage of this draft, the beekeepers became more and more active. They led one biohazard incident after another around the world, still driving a truck with that cartoon image printed on it, and using a slightly different T virus. Including their previous raid on the Savannah blockade, the zombies in the truck were also ordinary T virus zombies, just like they were testing and developing a new T virus. But in addition to causing biohazards everywhere, this organization is still full of mystery. Unlike the Greyhound organization, they did not make demands or declare their own ideas, and just did things silently. The few captives captured in the hijacking incident and the captives captured in these new incidents, after interrogation, the intelligence obtained was similar, but it was useless for the official to find out the true face of the beekeepers. The captives all knew their missions, but they knew nothing about the specifics of the beekeeper organization. Another strange thing is that these captives could not tell the specific reasons why they joined the beekeeper organization at that time, and naturally began to work for the beekeeper organization and were highly loyal. This problem might have been a breakthrough in the investigation, but almost overnight, the prisons where these captives were held had a biochemical crisis. From the video recorded by the on-site monitoring equipment, the source of the outbreak was the captured personnel of the beekeeper organization. This is not because the BasedonaMovie or other organizations are not doing their job well. When they captured the captives, they had arranged a physical examination to confirm that there was no biochemical virus in the other party's body. In other words, the beekeeper organization injected the virus into the captives through various prison measures without triggering the alarm. However, no matter how many times the investigators checked the surveillance, they were still at a loss and could not find out how the other party did this. Luo Guang and Jill came to the Bear Country as investigators of the BSAA and were invited to participate in the investigation of the biochemical crisis in the Orel City Prison. The Orel City Prison is one of the places where members of the Beekeepers organization were imprisoned, and a biochemical crisis also occurred. The Beekeepers organization triggered a small-scale biochemical crisis in Orel City. However, the local people here are tough, and the local military and police solved the problem before the BSAA arrived. Several civilians even caught the person who released the biochemical virus. Welcome to Orel City. The receptionist was a local officer named Andrei Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Andrei is a 2-meter tall, strong, muscular man. His deep blue eyes are looking at the two thin BSAA investigators in front of him. I am Jill Valentine, director of the European branch of the BSAA, and this is our consultant Luo Guang. Jill stepped forward and shook hands with the other party. Andrei raised his eyebrows. He didn't expect that the other party would be the head of the BSAA branch, and that the other party would be personally involved in the investigation. This made him wonder if there was some other hidden secret in this matter that the BSAA did not disclose in order to keep it confidential. Despite his thick eyebrows and big eyes, in the army he is what his teammates call a big smart and has a very flexible mind. Luo Guang also shook hands with the other party, and both parties also said hello. Andrei smiled and secretly hid his hands behind his back and started rubbing them. He had just given the two of them a blow, but one was stronger than the other. He almost thought his hands were going to be useless. In order not to be embarrassed, he said, "We have already investigated this incident clearly. I don't understand why the higher UPS are still bothering you." "Actually, it's just a formality," Luo Guang responded with a smile. Gil then said, "The higher UPS are just in case, and they want to do an extra layer of investigation. In fact, they have been in Woolly Bear Country for some time. They have carried out in-depth cooperation with the officials of the Furry Bear Country on anti-biochemical crisis matters. The Furry Bear Nation has provided money and effort to allow BSAA to establish another branch base in the European part of the Furry Bear Nation, and to train native Furry Bear Nation members in this base. Specially selected soldiers. As the Mouseong country of the Vuchain, it has a sub-base in itself. The reason why BSAA hopes to build another sub-base is to allow BSAA to deploy more troops in its own country until the soldiers of their own army can stand alone. The Bear Country did not have this plan at the beginning. It was only after a new person came to power recently that the biochemical crisis became more and more serious. In order to ensure national security, this decision was made. Anyway, the place and facilities are ready, so the overall cost will not be too high. Luo Guang and the two followed Andrei into the car and headed to the prison. Order has been restored over there, and several people came to the monitoring room and began to check the video images. Luo Guang looked at it at 4 times speed and asked, "Have all the internal personnel investigated it? Including the delivery person?" Andrei replied, "We have investigated it. They are all old employees and have been working in the prison before the beekeepers appeared." "Where's the food?" "It's all rice from a big pot, and it's impossible to deliver it accurately." "It is possible to deliver it accurately," Luo Guang retorted. "For example, there is a substance in the target's body, and it will only work if it is fused with another substance. In this case, even if it is a big pot, there will be no problem." He added, "It's not just the meals, it's also possible the tableware." Gil, who was watching the surveillance camera, nodded in agreement, which was similar to using poison to kill people. After thinking for a while, Andrei said, "That's just a guess, and we can't verify it now." According to him, the food in the prison was dumped and the pots, pans, and utensils were all sterilized, so there was no way to verify this statement. Luo Guang sighed and said, "Has the body been examined?" "Naturally, it has been checked, and it has been checked in all aspects. Compared with the previous data, there is no difference. There are no special changes in the body." Andre had done his homework and was well aware of every aspect of the incident, so he answered Luo Guang's questions immediately. The same goes for virus species. We tested it with a scanner recently sold on the market. It belongs to the T virus. Luo Guang felt that the other party was not rigorous enough, and said, the beekeeper organization has a large number of T virus samples of various types, and the scanner cannot analyze them. Of course we know that the body has been transported to the research institute for analysis, but there are no results yet. Andre said that they only looked rough on the outside, but they still worked very carefully. Meow, the reason why Bear Country doesn't use its original name is because bears are cute. 3. Good night, I'm so sleepy. Evolution begins with Resident Evil author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 423. The three watched 24 hours of surveillance video at 4 times the speed. It's not that Luo Guang and Gil don't want to speed up anymore, but the computers here don't allow 8 times the speed, and the surveillance pictures are not high definition. 4 times the speed will be very blurry. As for Andre, he followed reluctantly. His eyes had finished reading but his mind didn't know what he had seen. He didn't want to admit this, and he suspected that the other party was just pretending, so he asked, did the 2 investigators see anything? Luo Guang stood up, stretched and said, Jill, what do you think? It doesn't seem to be a problem at first glance. Jill shook her head, finding nothing. Luo Guang picked up the remote control, selected one of the captive's videos, adjusted the progress bar, and then played it at normal speed. After about 10 seconds, he pressed pause. After reading it, Andre asked, isn't the prisoner just swatting mosquitoes and tickling them? Luo Guang did not answer. He pulled out the surveillance videos of other prisoners one by one and played them for 10 seconds from the middle. All the prisoners did the same thing. No need to ask any more, Andre already understood what the other party meant. Luo Guang listed the distance between the cells where the 4 people were and the time they were bitten, and said, it can't be verified anyway, so just treat it as a guess. Those people will suddenly turn into zombies, which is probably related to the biting mosquito. He continued, it is possible that the mosquito is a new biochemical weapon organized by the beekeepers. Andre looked at the information written by Luo Guang and said, these distances and times. The flight speed of mosquitoes is generally 1.5 to 2.5 kilometers per hour. But under normal circumstances, mosquitoes do not fly straight forward, but circle in a space. Gil understood and said, these data prove that the mosquito basically runs to the next person immediately after biting one person. Andre picked up the pen and calculated for a while, confirming that Luo Guang's calculation results were correct. He couldn't help but be surprised that the other party's calculation speed was too fast. But after he put down the pen, he said, but it cannot be verified. This is the most troublesome. The pixels of the surveillance camera are too low, and it is difficult to see whether there are mosquitoes. It was precisely because of this that Luo Guang did not make a copy for the Red Emperor to use a computer to increase the definition. I just said it couldn't be verified, it was just a speculation. No matter what, our trip is not in vain. Jill said, the beekeeper organization has been so active recently, and there will be opportunities to capture the other party's people in the future. Andre nodded, and he should pay attention to this if he captured the prisoner later. After asking, he took away the data written by Luo Guang, and then he could explain it to his superiors. Luo Guang and the 2 said goodbye to Andre and took the car back to the hotel. They planned to play for a few days before going back. This was naturally Luo Guang's idea, and Jill agreed after confirming the work situation. However, things did not go so smoothly. In the middle of the night, Jill, who was eating supper with Luo Guang, received an emergency call. A biochemical crisis broke out in the country of the bear. The location of the outbreak was a city called Pskov. While talking to Luo Guang about the basic situation, Jill put on the new combat uniform prepared by Luo Guang for her. Unlike the previous military combat uniforms, Luo Guang's current hardened armor is thinner and softer than before with the same defense, so he made a combat uniform with the same style as B.S.A.'s latest agent combat uniform. The whole body is black and gray. This combat uniform was made in the factory at the Brood base. Because it was difficult to install zippers on the hardened armor, he made the suit at his own factory in the Brood base. Luo Guang is also well prepared. In addition to the invisible fixed blade and R-9 pistol, there is another new piece of equipment, the Hive drone system. The whole unit is cylindrical and consists of 5 small drones, 8 mini drones and a charging system. Regardless of size, these drones are equipped with photo, video and audio functions. The only difference between the two is battery life, flight speed, and maximum altitude. The drone can be controlled directly using Luo Guang's watch. The Red Emperor, as the mother nest, will also receive and analyze it in real time, and even control the drone for Luo Guang. The two of them were ready, and when they walked out of the hotel door, Andre was already waiting at the door. The other party waved, and Gil looked at Luo Guang before getting into the car together. Although it was only a small thing, Andre still noticed this detail. The identity of both parties has been verified and there is no problem, but in that case why is the consultant the one who makes the decision? However, he was just curious and had no intention of delving into the internal affairs of BSAA. Andre was driving while talking about things in Pskov. We sent the prisoner to the research institute in Pskov for anatomy research to confirm the problem. The results arrived at noon yesterday, and at around 2 o'clock today there was an accident. Is this also caused by the beekeeper organization? Luo Guang was surprised. The other organization seemed to move too fast. The institute said they were attacked by beekeepers, which caused the virus to leak internally. Andre thought of the intelligence he heard and said, when the outbreak broke out, the citizens, like the people in Orel City, took the initiative to attack the zombies and planned to take the initiative to eliminate those infected. Luo Guang controlled the laptop, sent a message to the Red Emperor to collect intelligence, and asked, But what appeared this time was not those slow-moving guys at that time, they were quick-moving, so civilian casualties were high. You don't do enough publicity and education, Luo Guang commented. Andre looked proud when he talked about Oriol citizens solving the biological crisis organized by beekeepers before, but now he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed when he was slapped in the face. Gil asked, have you analyzed the specific virus leaked at the research institute? I'm not sure, but I heard from my friends that there are viruses. Jill was very surprised and said uncertainly, Huh? What do you mean? That research institute is a research institute that cooperates with our country, and many virus samples are stored in it. The attack caused various viruses to leak into sewers and other places. Investigating responsibility will be a matter later. Luo Guang asked, what kind of viruses are there in the research institute? We won't know the specific situation until we get there. I just listened to what was said above. Andre, who was only responsible for sending the two of them to the airport, said, I'll leave it to you next. The two came to the city of Pskov and were picked up by a soldier. They came to the Bear country where the military set up camps and blockades outside the city, and were brought to a commander named Ivan. At this time, BSAA was still preparing troops to come over. It happened that Gil and his 2 men were in Orel City, so O'Brien asked them to come over first to assist. On the wall of the command post hangs a map of the city of Pskov. Pskov is located at the confluence of the Velikaya River and the Lesser Pskov River. It itself is divided into several areas by rivers, and this outbreak was concentrated in one of the areas, which was separated by a river on one side. Ivan has drawn 4 circles on the infected area, 3 of which have T virus, Haran virus and unknown virus written on them respectively, and the last circle says survivor. Ivan came to the map and introduced to Luo Guang and Gil. According to the information from the attacked research institute, a total of 37 viruses were leaked in this incident. However, most of the viruses died in the fight, and only this one was left. 3 viruses broke out and spread in the city. Captain, the director of the Peskov Research Institute is here. A soldier came in with someone and then left. The person who came in wore small framed glasses, a suit, and a briefcase. He looked no different from ordinary elites. Hello, Captain Ivan, just call me Peter. Thank you for rescuing the survivors in our institute. Peter in Russian means cold stone. Luo Guang looked at the other person's indifferent expression and felt that the other person was just as his name suggests. Ivan didn't feel like he deserved anything to be thanked for completing his superior task, so he went straight to the point and said, "You're here just in time. These 2 are consultants of BSAA, please explain the virus." Yes, Director Peter came to the map, took the baton from Ivan's hand naturally, and said, "The T virus and Harlan virus written here are mutated, and they are the same as what you BSAA encountered before. It's been a different life." Luo Guang asked, "Captain Ivan said before that viruses fight each other. Is this the reason why viruses mutate?" Yes, fortunately, these viruses did not all merge together, but divided into 3 forces to fight, so the infection slowed down after the initial outbreak. Luo Guang looked at the map. Among the 3 virus-infected areas, the circle of T virus was the smallest, followed by Harlan virus, and finally the unknown virus. What about the unknown virus? Isn't it the virus in your research institute? Peter answered Jill's question and said, "It may be a new species that emerged during the virus battle, or it may be a virus brought by the beekeeper organization. Because the symptoms of people infected with the unknown virus are not in our database." Jill asked Ivan, "Has the military investigated people infected with the unknown virus?" Not yet, Ivan explained. "We started blockade, evacuation, and screening as soon as we arrived in Peskov, and there was no time to do anything else. For this reason, the survivors could only organize and hold on there temporarily. Until Luo Guang and the others came here, Mao Zedong had only completed the blockade part. Blockade, evacuation, and screening are processes summed up by various countries based on experience to face early biochemical crises." Peter took out a document from his briefcase and said, "This is the virus list of our institute. This is what the military requested from the institute to facilitate their confirmation and response to this biological crisis." Luo Guang took a glance and saw a logo on the list, which was the trademark of Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company. Jill and Luo Guang stood together and naturally noticed this sign. She asked directly, "Is that research institute owned by Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company?" Director Peter looked at the BSAA too and said, "Our company has always had relevant cooperation with the military. In fact, the Mao Zedong government has shares in Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company, but this matter is well hidden, and it is only said to be a cooperative relationship to the outside world." He continued, "I know you BSAA don't like those pharmaceutical companies, but our company operates legally and compliantly, has a strict virus management system, and there are official supervisors in the institute to supervise. This time it was only because of a biochemical terrorist attack, leading to a biohazard." Luo Guang answered, "I just don't understand why your companies like to build dangerous facilities like research institutes in bustling cities. In fact, this is his or the world's prejudice. In fact, not all pharmaceutical company research institutes are built in cities. It is just because accidents in urban research institutes will be widely reported, so we have such an impression." Director Peter said, "The research institute here also takes care of related businesses such as genetic testing and medical cooperation with hospitals, so it is opened in the city. But it is not suitable for storing various biochemical viruses in urban research institutes." Although he cooperated with Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company, Luo Guang's words made sense, so Ivan also nodded. Director Peter's expression did not change, and he replied in a natural tone, "Because our medical cooperation requires the use of those viruses. Although these biochemical viruses can bring disasters, it does not prevent them from also bringing benefits to mankind. Luo Guang also thought the same about biochemical viruses, but the other party did not actually answer his reasons directly. Just as he was about to speak, Captain Ivan interrupted, "Everyone, the most important thing now is to solve the biological crisis in Pskov. As for accountability, I believe the higher UPS will handle it seriously and not let anyone escape their responsibilities." Director Peter knew from Luo Guang's expression that his reason was untenable, so he was glad that Ivan could interrupt the topic. He didn't want to reveal too much information in front of BSAA. He followed up on this topic and said, "This is not what we are good at. It depends on the two people of BSAA. Jill is full of hostility to pharmaceutical companies, but now is indeed not the time to study the problem of Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company. She said, the blockade is set up outside the city, so what is the situation now in other areas of the city that are not infected?" Ivan replied, "We have deployed elite soldiers and generals on all the connecting bridges to blockade them. Areas separated by rivers that are free of infection are routinely disinfected and patrolled by soldiers." He then began to explain the reason why citizens from uninfected areas were not evacuated. According to the previous census, the injection rate of T-virus vaccine and Harlan virus vaccine injection rate of Pskov citizens were 96.2% and 63.9% respectively, so most of them citizens have antibodies, and they can stay at home temporarily and wait for support, so that we can reduce the loss of manpower and material resources and reduce the cost of antibiochemical. Luo Guang looked at Peter and said, "Director Peter, you mentioned before that those viruses have fusion mutations. Even so, can the vaccine still be used? And the unknown virus seems to be a problem, right? We are still researching and confirming. However, Pskov is a transportation hub with a large population. If the whole city is evacuated, it will easily cause panic and it will not be easy to screen, so the citizens are quarantined at home, and then the military screens to confirm that they are not infected. In the end, the best option is to arrange evacuation according to the other party's wishes." Peter explained the military approach as if he was the one giving the order. Then he pointed to the map of Pskov city and said, "And you see, the area of the unknown virus is right between the other two viruses, somewhere from a perspective, this virus is also isolated, and the threat of T-virus and Harlan virus is not great to us, so we made this decision." Meow, no data like BSAA clothes found. Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 424. We at BSAA do not recommend this approach. If the situation worsens, we will have to spit out whatever money we save now, Luo Guang concluded. After all, only about 1/3 of the city in Pskov has experienced a biological crisis, so it is understandable that the military will adopt a conservative strategy. But the 2B.S.A.S cannot think so, because it is what they should do to prevent problems before they occur, and it is their duty to raise those issues. As for whether the other party will accept and implement it, it can only depend on what the commander of this operation thinks. Now, due to cost considerations, the military of the Bear Country may also feel that the biochemical crisis has just broken out, and they have controlled it well. Military soldiers are also gradually clearing out zombies in T-virus infected areas and Harlan virus infected areas. Therefore, Ivan chose to resolve the incident without requiring a large-scale evacuation of the people and saving costs. Luo Guang didn't give the other party a chance to refute. He had already fulfilled his obligation to remind him. When talking about another issue, he said, "There is another suggestion here. It is best to send people to patrol the river and regularly detect the composition of the river water at fixed points. At the same time, in the lower reaches set up an interception net to prevent biochemical monsters from falling into the water and flowing downstream. In fact, you can confirm whether there is a biochemical virus in the water just by looking at the physical condition of the fish in the river, but by then it is already too late, so it is necessary to detect it in time. Upon hearing this, Jill knew what her boyfriend was worried about, and added, "Since you are not planning to evacuate, the water plant needs to be tested at any time to ensure that there will be no problems with the water source." Director Peter also understood what the two of them meant, pushed his eyes and said, "Our company will provide assistance." He picked up the oil-based pen on the table, marked 30 red dots on the river map, and said, "Captain Ivan, 2 consultants, this is the testing point I have initially arranged based on the flow of the river. We are at the water plant. Someone will be sent there immediately. The red dots are located in and downstream of the city, and also take into account the city's drainage outlets, and the equipment of Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company can test 30 river water samples at one time." The water plant was not in the infected area, but to be on the safe side, Peter still adopted Jill's suggestion. "As for the interception network, I will let my subordinates handle it, and will contact other troops to patrol and publicize along the way. But do the water sources on the opposite shore of the infected area also need to be tested?" Ivan looked at the map and touched the beard on his chin. Raised questions. It was not safe to take samples in infected areas. He did not want his men to take risks and do something that had no immediate value. In his opinion, the best way is to clean up the infected area quickly and directly, and the rest is just fancy work. Gil thought for a moment and said, "If you are worried about danger, you can sail to the infected area to take samples. This is safer and the elite snipers on the other side can also provide cover." This was a good suggestion. Ivan nodded. He immediately called his subordinates to arrange the things that had been agreed upon before. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. Gil was still worried about the people in the survivor area and said, "Captain Ivan, what's the situation like with the people in the survivor area?" Ivan pointed to a building in the survivor area circle and said, "That is the Pskov City Police Department. They responded immediately when the crisis broke out and organized citizens to block the streets with debris and furniture. Citizens with gun licenses were gathered for self-defense. Although the country of the bear has very strict gun control, it is not technically a gun ban country. It bans handguns but not long guns. It can be said that it has abundant force, so the citizens of Orel and Pskov took the initiative to take action to combat the biochemical crisis. It's just that there is a big difference between zombies and zombies. Coupled with the differences in the scale of spread and the number of zombies, the endings of the citizens on both sides will be different. The initial failure to take the initiative also led to the fact that even if Pskov J side organized citizens with guns to assist, the manpower was still dwarfed by comparison, so it could only passively defend at that time. Ivan briefly explained the initial situation in the survival area and continued, "They have been keeping in contact with us now, and our military has sent a lot of manpower to assist in the defense." He felt that the survivor area was already in a stable state, and there was no need to break the situation and evacuate the survivors for the time being. Luo Guang first looked at the map and said, "It is indeed okay now, but if an accident occurs and the stability of the survivor area is broken, many people will die. If appropriate, it is best to evacuate the civilians one by one." Placement. Ivan said, "I will consider this issue, but I also believe that our military can protect our people." Luo Guang nodded without refuting, and said, "We, BSAA, want to enter the infected area to confirm the specific situation." Before Ivan could answer, Director Peter asked, "Are you going to collect information on unknown viruses?" "Our researchers are already cooperating with the military on this matter and have dispatched a special operations team." He looked at the delicate watch on his hand and said, "According to the round trip and plan, I'll be back in a few hours. Our purpose is to go to the research institute to confirm the situation of the beekeeper organization. Otherwise, as time goes by, we will find fewer and fewer clues." Peter did not believe B.S.A.'s words and questioned Luo Guang's words, "Your real purpose is the research institute of our Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company, right?" Isn't your institute legal and compliant? What are you worried about? Luo Guang shrugged, looking strange. As the other party said, if it is legal and compliant, they don't have to be afraid of BSAA coming to check. But Peter has been working outside recently and has not been supervising his subordinates at all times. He said, for the sake of fairness, our company will also send someone to go with you. Jill frowned and said unhappily, this is a secret that cannot be told. Are you worried that we will know it? Speaking of fairness, it shouldn't be the military that sends people. There was a flaw in Peter's words, and she caught it. Captain Ivan came out to make peace and said, I know that the Beekeepers, a biochemical terrorist organization, have been very active recently. It is reasonable for you BSAA to investigate the situation. He didn't say that he would only investigate the Beekeepers and not the Institute. After all, the two things were in the same place. He continued, but the situation in the unknown virus infection area is unclear now. We are still evaluating the specific situation. Isn't it too dangerous for you to enter rashly? The Institute is in the unknown virus infection area. Luo Guang replied, Captain Ivan, we are professionals, please believe in our professional ability. Although we have not yet obtained accurate information about the infected area, we will not joke with our lives. We are sure to make this proposal. Gil added, Director Peter, is there any inside story of this incident that we cannot let our BSAA know? Ivan fell silent, not knowing how to persuade for a while. As the commander-in-chief of this biochemical crisis, Ivan can directly order the two to assist here, but Jill's words made him dare not rashly issue such an order without a legitimate reason. Peter said, no matter what, we can't let the two BSAA consultants take such a big risk, and now other BSAA members have not arrived yet. We need you to help seal off this infected area to prevent the situation from getting serious, right? His brain worked quickly, and he continued to propose without pausing, why don't we do this? We first investigate the unknown virus, at least we know the general situation of the unknown virus, so it will be safer for you to investigate, right? In fact, negotiations are for the benefit of each other, so sometimes it is better to persuade others from other people's perspectives. As for how to say these things without damaging one's own interests, it requires considerable skills and brains. Ivan also said, the most important thing now is to prevent the infection from spreading further. We need the assistance of your BSAA. Luo Guang took the initiative to ask Jill, Minister, what do you think? Jill thought for a while and replied, indeed, preventing the spread of infection is the top priority. Then she looked at Captain Ivan, pointed to the uninfected area on the other side of the city, and said, can you send a driver and a car to take us to check the blockade and the blockade situation over there? Captain Ivan immediately replied, yes, I will arrange it. By the way, I will send another guard to you. Peter looked at the two B.S.A.S who left and said, thank you for your assistance, Captain Ivan. Although he had just returned from a business trip, he actually knew what happened in the Peskov Institute a long time ago, because his well-trained subordinates did not dare to deceive their superiors and immediately reported the general situation of the institute to him after knowing that something big had happened. So he had already called the institute to arrange things properly, but when he came to the blockade, he immediately found his researchers to inquire about the situation and found a lot of problems, so in his opinion, it was not the time for the BSAA to investigate the institute. Captain Ivan replied, I will trouble you next. He had received instructions from his superiors, so he assisted and even acted according to Peter's ideas. Medvedev Pharmaceuticals also promised the military that they would do things well and prevent this biochemical crisis. After all, this disaster was not what they wanted to see. This company does not have the strength of Umbrella, so naturally it does not have the confidence of Umbrella to do the thankless research of biological weapons. On the other side, Luo Guang and Jill were sitting in the car to check the blockade. Unlike the blockade methods of the Lighthouse Country and Turkey, the Bear Country chose a large number of barbed wire for blockade, leaving only the entrance and exit. Then the military buried a large number of mines behind the barbed wire, and finally the patrol of the army soldiers. Every time they buried a mine, they would put a flag on it to facilitate minesweeping later. On the other hand, the sewer system was simply blocked by barbed wire and fixed sentry posts. Although there were many complaints, such as barbed wire was not something that could not be crossed by zombies or other biochemical monsters, after all, they basically had no sense of pain. From the perspective of Luo Guang and the others, this was more like preventing people in the blockade from leaving. It was not until the afternoon that the third group of zombie clearing teams set off. After watching them leave, Luo Guang and Jill returned to the command post and brought up the matter of the Harlan virus. Moreover, the night was a favorable environment for biochemical monsters, and they should wait until daytime to carry out the mission. However, it was useless. Ivan felt that his men were all elite, and the two teams of soldiers had returned to the camp unscathed, which made him look down on those biochemical monsters. However, he still specifically told the soldiers to be cautious and do what they can. "Where is Director Peter?" Luo Guang asked Ivan. Captain Ivan thought for a while and did not answer directly. "The team we sent to the unknown virus-infected area exceeded the scheduled contact time and lost contact without sending back any information." When this happened, Luo Guang and his team were still checking the situation on the other side of the river, and Ivan did not take the initiative to contact BSAA and notify them. He continued, "So we wanted to send a second investigation team, but the researchers of Medvedev Pharmaceuticals were afraid and did not dare to participate, so Director Peter went to solve the problem." Luo Guang had a hunch that this biochemical crisis would not be solved so easily, and he also had some doubts about the investigation team, asking, "What exactly is this investigation team going to investigate?" Normally, it is to solve a zombie or other type of biochemical monster, and then extract the virus in the body. A team of soldiers is enough to solve the problem. Even if they were worried that the enemy would come after hearing the noise, it would be a feasible method to directly cut off the enemy's arm and bring it back. Ivan answered with a distressed look, "I don't know either. They didn't even call for help when they were in danger. I don't know what happened at all. Do you know where they disappeared? Let's go and check the situation." Luo Guang continued, "Anyway, those researchers don't dare to go, so let's go." Jill also nodded and said, "Yes, we have conducted special studies in BSAA, and we have learned about extracting samples and so on." After thinking for a while, Ivan said, "Let's do this. Wait for the results from Director Peter. If there are really no researchers, I may have to trouble you." He wanted Peter to solve the problem of BSAA. Then, he sent the two out of the command post and asked the soldiers who had escorted them to check the blockade to take Luo Guang and the others to eat and rest first. After the two had their meal, they went to rest. Because Jill asked, the two rested directly in the same tent. After Luo Guang checked that there were no surveillance devices inside and outside the tent, he sat on the bed, and Jill naturally leaned on his shoulder. He whispered as if he was saying love words, "They are hiding something from us." Peter feels like the commander of this biochemical crisis. Jill had other ideas. Luo Guang said, "But they did send people to deal with the enemies in the T-virus and Harlan virus infected areas, and they immediately sent people to do the spot check of the river water. It seems that they are indeed solving the biochemical crisis." Jill nodded gently and asked, "In this case, why do you say they are hiding something from us? The relationship between Medvedev Pharmaceuticals and the military of the Bear Country may be closer than we think." Luo Guang first stated a prerequisite, and then continued, "Peter may not be the person in charge of command, but Ivan must be the person who covers Peter's work. It's strange that the investigation of such an important matter as the unknown virus has not made any progress." "But didn't he say that the team lost contact?" Jill also vaguely felt that there was something wrong with this matter. She was responsible for refuting it in order to better reason things and eliminate possibilities. The investigation team was wiped out without any reply or help. With such a powerful monster, I don't think the infection areas of the other two viruses can develop, and judging from the circle drawn on the map, the infection range of the unknown virus is not outstanding compared to the other two. Luo Guan continued, the most important thing is that if there is such a powerful guy, I don't believe that the military will not know anything about it. For safety reasons, we should behave obediently before the BSAA team comes. I understand. Jill understood what her boyfriend meant. When more BSAA personnel come, they can better avoid the military's eyes and investigate in person. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 426. Peter, director of the Peacecoff City Research Institute, lifted up the tent of the command post and stood at the door without going any further inside. 69shux.com. Ivan was answering the phone at this time. He finally replied Roger, hung up the phone, looked at Peter and asked, how is the situation? Their mission failed. Peter stepped forward and asked, have the BSAA people returned? Ivan nodded, then told the other party what he had said to BSSAA, and at the same time told the other party the bad news, the support from the BSSA troops is coming soon. Peter said, I understand. Did the superiors just tell you the matter? He knew the content of Ivan's call just now because he immediately found the company's superiors after learning that the investigation team's mission had failed, and then the superiors negotiated with the other party. Hearing what the other party said, Ivan's face was full of displeasure and he said, no matter what happened in this biological crisis and what information you got, I hope to hear from you or my subordinates. What Peter said. Chief. I don't want to hear any more information that I don't know from the top. He devoted himself to completing the tasks assigned by his superiors and assisting Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company. However, the people on the other side kept secrets from him. When the investigation team came back and obtained the information, he was the last one to know, which made him feel that he was here. Authority is threatened. Therefore, even if the other party has something to do with the higher UPS, he still has to talk about it. Director Peter apologized, I originally planned to report it to my superiors and silence the survivors before telling you in person, but I didn't expect them to contact your superiors directly. Ivan felt that such a smart person would not have thought of this, and that the other party was just trying to step down for him. He snorted and said, I won't do this next time. Peter didn't care whether the other party really let go of the matter, because the other party was a competent soldier, and he would definitely obey the orders given by his superiors, so he just calmed the other party a little and told him what Ivan needed to do. The higher UPS didn't tell us this. They only asked us to delay the BSAA investigation. Ivan frowned. If it hadn't been for the higher UPS request, he might not have cooperated with Peter before to delay the progress of dealing with this biological crisis. Peter nodded and said, yes, but we have to share the worries with the above. This is the best way to delay, isn't it? Ivan replied, I am the commander of this operation. I can order the BSAA side to perform tasks around the blockade so that the other party will not investigate. Peter shook his head and said, I have investigated those two people. They are the heroes of the Harlan incident and staunch anti-biochemical fighters. If the BSAA troops arrive, they will definitely ask to enter for investigation. And Ivan, I am not discuss with you, don't forget that your superiors asked you to follow my instructions. He finally said that order to make the other party unable to refute it. Luo Guang recovered the mini-drone that was released, and after saying a few words to Jill, a messenger called their names outside the tent. The two looked at each other, Understanding each other, each picked up their weapons and equipment, and left the tent. Two BSAA consultants, "I'm sorry to disturb you so late." Peter stood up to welcome the two of them, and then said, "That's it, Yvonne told us what you mentioned." Luo Guang went straight to the point and asked, "Aren't those researchers willing to go?" Peter pretended to smile bitterly and replied, "Yes, but there must be brave men under the heavy rewards. We have contacted researchers from other branches, but there has been no reply yet. Then I heard Captain Yvonne mention the two of you. They all have relevant experience and have volunteered to participate." Jill pretended to be embarrassed and answered, "We thought so at first, but we just thought about it. The infected area at night is too dangerous. You also persuaded us before that it would be best to wait for you to investigate and come up with the information, so we have given up this idea." Peter was slightly stunned. He thought that the other party would set off immediately without hesitation. He looked at Yvonne, but the other person didn't answer. So he could only go on to say, "One moment is not the other. The unknown virus's combat effectiveness is much greater than we imagined. We need to investigate the situation of this virus as soon as possible, such as its transmission route." Luo Guang looked at Peter and smiled. He had just used a mini drone to monitor most of the conversation between him and Yvonne. It's just that they, who represent BSAA, have no conclusive evidence. The content of the recording does not represent anything, and the legitimacy of the source of the recording and video recording will be questioned, and they cannot go to court, so it is not time for them to fall out. Feeling a little flustered by Luo Guang's inexplicable smile, Peter asked, "Consultant Luo, is there anything funny?" Luo Guang put away his smile and replied seriously, "If I had known this, why bother in the first place? If you had agreed to our request from the beginning, we would have brought the virus samples back a long time ago, and we should have the results by now." Gil was speechless and said, "Your military should have also participated in B.S.A.'s antibiochemical training. It's been almost a day since the biochemical crisis. Why haven't you completed the basic investigation of the unknown virus? This is so inefficient." The two of them put the responsibility on Yvonne, and Yvonne without saying a word. Originally, Yvonne didn't want to get involved, but after hearing what the two said, he couldn't sit still. But he still remembered what his superiors said, and didn't directly blame the Medvedev pharmaceutical company. He hurriedly said, "Things can't keep up with the changes. We didn't expect that the investigation team we sent out would be wiped out halfway." Peter went downhill and said, "In fact, the destroyed investigation team was the second team. Otherwise, those researchers would not be deterred and refused the temptation of high bonuses. This is fake, there is no second investigation team. However, Yvonne, who has military orders, will not expose it, but this matter cannot withstand investigation. It can be investigated by asking the sentinels at the entrances and exits of the city." Peter gave Yvonne a reassuring look. Since he said it, it will naturally be handled properly later, and the hush money will be paid. Sadness appeared on his face, and he played the emotional card. "Yes, our Peskov Institute has sacrificed 2 batches of precious researchers, who are all valuable assets of our company. They are all family people, enjoying generous remuneration and benefits, but when they heard that they needed people to go deep into dangerous places to collect virus samples, they stood up at the first time. If Yvonne hadn't seen how those researchers followed their subordinates timidly, he would have believed it." And Luo Guang's first feeling was that his previous evaluation of the name was wrong. Peter, who finished speaking with emotion, looked at Luo Guang and the others, only to receive 2 cold and handsome faces. When Luo Guang and the others were resting in the tent, they were called in before they discussed whether to take advantage of the situation and go into the city to investigate. They are now in step because Luo Guang can use mental power to tell Jill his ideas, and their current policy is not to step into the trap and act according to the situation. Luo Guang stared at Peter, who was shedding crocodile tears, and said, Director Peter, I remember that you are an outstanding graduate of the National University, and you are also a virologist, so you should be familiar with things like collecting samples, right? When Peter heard what the other party said, he probably thought of what the other party would say next. Then aren't you just right for the next investigation team? Luo Guang said what he expected. Before Peter spoke, Jill immediately showed a happy look on her face and said, yes, isn't Director Peter the best candidate? After all, you are familiar with Peacecoff and the Institute, and you are very familiar with all kinds of viruses in the Institute. Under the influence of Luo Guang, her acting skills are also very good now. This. Peter looked around and thought of an excuse, I am powerless, and following the investigation team will only hinder us. And the 2 investigation teams have failed, we need more combat-capable people. You are the best choice. The reason why the 2 wanted the 2 BSAA to investigate now was to use their disappearance to prevent the BSAA troops from conducting an in-depth investigation. Without Minister Jill, the BSAA would be without a person in charge, and Yvonne would be able to temporarily control the next actions of the BSAA and delay time. This was the general plan that Peter told Yvonne. Luo Guang showed a thoughtful look. He knew the purpose of Peter's plan, but he didn't understand one thing, was the purpose of the other party's plan really to delay the investigation? The death of 2 people could delay the investigation of the B.S.A.A.'s large forces, which was actually a false logic. The BSAA, which lost a minister, also had the possibility of attacking the entire army and flattening the infected area, didn't it? And Luo Guang always felt that after the 2 of them checked the blockade, Director Peter's attitude towards the 2 of them had changed. But when he used the drone to monitor, it was already after dinner. Seeing Luo Guang in deep thought, Jill followed the previous plan and said, although there was an accident at the BSAA, some of the personnel should be arriving soon, right? She had contacted the main force during her break, but the other party replied that there was a problem with the military airport in the Bear Country, so the arrival time might be delayed. However, in order to prevent problems with the aircraft, the BSAA also adopted 2 means of transportation, so the soldiers who drove and took the train on the ground would arrive in Peacecoff in about an hour or 2. Yvonne replied, yes, we received the news that the BSAA Vanguard will arrive here in about 1 or 2 hours. We have prepared a place for you to camp in advance. Peter felt that Yvonne could not help and could only rely on himself, and said, Minister Valentien, Consultant Luo, I beg you to help. The unknown virus has been unclear. I am worried that this biochemical crisis will cause accidents, and the lives and property of the citizens will be in danger at that time. Jill looked at Luo Guang. It was indeed a problem, but she felt uncomfortable that she knew it was a trap and stepped into it. Moreover, they did not know the specific content of the trap, which would invisibly bring danger to themselves and the 2 of them. She did not want to rashly agree to the investigation for her own reasons and drag her boyfriend into danger. But Luo Guang saw the other party's hesitation. The victims of this biochemical crisis were innocent, and Jill could not bear to see this. However, he now also has the ability to protect the other party. Even if it is a trap, he will not be easily defeated. He did not take advantage of the situation more because of his stable character and did not think he was invincible. So he used his mental power to say to Jill, I support you no matter what decision you make, and I will clear it for you no matter what threat it is. Jill's eyes lit up, then he turned to look at Peter and said, you are right, this unknown virus is of great importance, and the basic situation should be investigated as soon as possible. We will go there in person. Although there are probably few survivors in the infected area, in order to allow the citizens of Peacecoff to return to normal life as soon as possible, this biochemical crisis should not be delayed. Peter's face was full of joy, and things finally returned to his plan. He said, great, I thank you for your efforts on behalf of the people of the Peacecoff Institute. We will also prepare in advance to ensure that we can research the information you need as soon as possible. After that, he looked at Ivan. Ivan quickly said, "Okay, I'll get my men ready to accompany you on the investigation mission." As soon as the other party finished speaking, Luo Guang refused. "Don't bother, the two of us are enough." He explained the reason, saying, "The two of us work closely together. If there are too many people, it will be difficult to retreat quickly when something happens. After all, we are not going to carry out the elimination mission." Ivan was about to say something when he heard Director Peter say, "We respect your choice. Ivan, it's better for us not to send people to affect the other party's cooperation." After Luo Guang and the other person left the command post, Ivan asked Peter, "Why let them investigate on their own? This is different from the agreed plan." Peter told him that the specific plan was that the military would send people to investigate with the other party, and then he would send people disguised as people from the Beekeeper organization to ambush, and knock the two people unconscious and take them away for detention, and then their military would take the initiative to rescue the two people. Peter completed his task of delaying the BSAA investigation, and Ivan could also gain military merit. But in fact, this was not his real plan. Peter replied, "The other party has agreed to investigate, so there is no need for us to make trouble." For him, the two people just need to go to the infected area, and whether the military sends people or not is not a problem at all. He took out his phone and said, "And I am worried that we are too enthusiastic and will expose our purpose. Are you worried that they have begun to doubt us? After all, this matter involves a pharmaceutical company, and we have repeatedly refused the other party's investigation before, and now we are begging them, so the other party will definitely be suspicious. Then what are you going to do? Don't worry, leave the next thing to me, just pretend you don't know anything, just leave it to me." Peter didn't say another sentence, that is, he would find a third party to solve the problem. As for how the third party crossed the blockade and entered Pskov, Peter didn't need to bother Ivan, because there were people from their company in the army. He left the command post and made a phone call. Meow. Originally the two protagonists directly took advantage of the situation and taunted the other party a few times before agreeing. But I was not satisfied with this part after writing it several times, and finally changed it to the current way. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 427. The two of them crossed the blockade and walked into Pskov. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward arrow. Luo Guang took advantage of being out of the military's sight and released a small drone to hover in the sky to observe the situation at the entrance of the blockade, and then put on a headset connected to the Red Queen on one ear. While doing these things, he told Peter's plan and said, "The other party will send other people to kill him." Next, he didn't have time to observe and control the drone at any time, so he told the Red Queen his needs, and the other party controlled the drone to track the enemies sent by Peter. On the other hand, Luo Guang was able to know Peter's plan, not because he used the drone to continue to monitor the other party. There is still a risk of being discovered if a mini drone is used for a long time in a place with dense flow of people. So before he set off to Pskov, he used his Shinra virus to successfully infect the two people when he was with Peter. Ivan and eavesdropped on the intelligence. This is an ability extended by Luo Guang using his control skills. As long as someone is infected with the Shinra virus, Luo Guang can use the person's 5 senses to collect information around him. At the same time, he used his previous experience of communicating with various biochemical monsters to successfully develop the ability to spy on the thoughts of the infected, allowing him to use the reaction of the Shinra virus to read the thoughts of the other person's mind. This ability is very powerful, but Luo Guang doesn't like it, because he doesn't want to know the dirty and despicable things in those people's minds, such as some grasscarp people who go to the nuns to feel ashamed, so it is better to use it with caution. Although he can read thoughts, Luo Guang cannot read memories. Because there is no conclusion about the storage of memory in current technology, and he has not been exposed to these abilities, he is temporarily powerless. Now, Luo Guang uses the skill to know that Peter's real purpose is to get rid of the two of them. The other party intends to make a fake play, kill them directly, and then blame the deaths of the two on the zombies. But when he told Jill about this, he said that he knew it by using a monitoring device to monitor the other party's phone conversation, so it was reasonable for him to wear a single-sided headset. Jill did not doubt what her boyfriend said, and believed Luo Guang's words with resentment on her face. But soon she had a question: why did Medvedev Pharmaceuticals do this? We BSAA and the other party don't have much intersection, let alone hostility. After a pause, she thought of something and said, is it because of the Supervision Act? This Supervision Act, in simple terms, means that BSAA has the power to inspect the research institutes of major pharmaceutical companies. In particular, members of the Global Pharmaceutical Federation will receive special attention, because these member companies have had dealings with Umbrella Corporation before, and the production lines involving Umbrella's biological and chemical viruses and weapons are the easiest to complete technology accumulation and produce biological and chemical weapons. *****:** And Medvedev Pharmaceuticals happens to be one of the companies of the Global Pharmaceutical Federation. Did your BSAA gain anything from the investigation of their company's research institute? The gain here naturally refers to the discovery of problems. Luo Guang punched the head of the Harlan zombie that rushed over, and at the same time recalled the past situation. This was not mentioned in the intelligence received. They have entered the Harlan virus infection area. Because the entrance is not on the unknown virus area, it is fastest for them to pass through the Harlan virus infection area to the unknown virus area. The infection area was not quiet at night. Luo Guang and the others keenly heard the roars and fighting sounds of the zombies fighting each other. Jill easily dealt with the zombies on her side and said, there is no problem with the results of the census and random inspections at any time. The census refers to a thorough inventory of all the registered research institutes of the company by the BSAA after the bill is passed. Those companies would not report all their research institutes truthfully, but if they were discovered by the BSAA, they would basically only have the option of suspension and fine. So Luo Guang asked, is that the black den of the BSAA to knock out Medvedev Pharmaceuticals? Although he did not say the word research institute, Jill, a former police officer, still understood what Luo Guang meant. She drew her dagger and was about to stab it into the enemy's temple, and then said, no. So she wondered where the other party's hostility came from. Luo Guang kicked the heads of the 3 Harlan zombies that surrounded him with a sweeping kick, and said, could it be that Peter has a grudge against us, so he is using chicken feathers as a token of authority? After landing and standing firmly, he added, I didn't know this guy before. Jill twisted the zombie's arm, kicked the enemy away, and smashed the broken arm into the enemy's face, and then said, I don't know him either. After she stabbed an enemy to death with a broken billiard stick on the ground, she asked, then do we still have to investigate according to the planned route given by the other party? Before they set off, Peter found them and gave them a map with 2 locations in the unknown virus area written on it, both where the investigation team had an accident. Before Luo Guang could reply, the voice of Hong Huan came from his headset. A group of armed people passed the blockade and are following the traces of you solving the zombies and heading in your direction. The camera on the mini drone has night vision function, and it can see clearly even if the street lights in the Harlan infected area are basically destroyed. Luo Guang told Jill what happened, and then said, let's kill the zombies around us and then hide. Let's perform. He was sure that no one had placed a tracker on him, but Jill and some of her daily equipment were sometimes out of sight, so he decided to test it out to be prudent. After all, he has a lot of electronic equipment on him, and it would be too troublesome to wash his body with EMP pulses. As for the reason for dealing with the surrounding zombies, he was worried that his position would be exposed by the movements of those zombies after he hid. Jill understood. This was to test whether the other party's target was him, and to confirm whether he had a tracker or something like that. The Harlan zombies here have not changed much. The types are basically the same as those encountered in Harlan City. However, maybe because the biological crisis broke out not long ago, they have not encountered the Night Stalker yet. Therefore, they used close combat to deal with the enemies throughout the whole process, and none of the surrounding zombies were alerted by the sound. After discussing the next plan in a few words, the two immediately attacked separately, then eliminated all the Harlan zombies around them, and then jumped into the balcony of the apartment on the third floor next to them. The balcony is connected to the master room, and the balcony door is unlocked. The two of them directly deal with the zombies in the room silently, then hide and carefully observe the outside, waiting for the enemy to appear. 12 armed men appeared in their sight 10 minutes later. They are all in black combat uniforms, without identification epaulets, and the weapons in their hands are not uniform, but they all use 5.56 mm NATO standard rifle ammunition, such as M401 and AUG assault rifles. These people looked like mercenaries, but the city of Pskov had been blockaded by the Bear Country's military, and Luo Guang and his two men had carefully checked the blockade, so it was impossible for them to sneak in. As for the possibility of the other party airborne, it is even more impossible. Is the radar of the Bear Country fake? Therefore, although Luo Guang and Luo Guang did not communicate, they both thought that these heavily armed guys must have been deliberately let in by people on the blockade line of the Maoxiong Kingdom, which meant that they were the third party sent by Peter. Luo Guang took pictures of these people and observed each other carefully. No matter what the identity of the other party is, this is a major mistake by Ivan or the military of the Bear Country. These photos cannot be used now or will be used in the future. The armed men stopped when they arrived around Luo Guang's apartment. The leader was obviously the captain. After raising his hand to give the order to stop advancing, he clicked on two people and pointed at the dead zombies nearby, asking them to check the situation. At the same time, others were already consciously alert around them. The methods are cruel, most of them kill with one blow, and it is basically impossible to confirm what weapon was used. One of the mercenaries finished the inspection and reported to the captain, "This kind of wound can be caused without the sound of gunfire. The employer really found us a good life. They followed these corpses of zombies who died cruelly." The captain looked around and said, "The question now is, where have they gone? Or have they been killed by zombies?" The Bear Country's military has electronic reconnaissance satellites, but they will not be used by these unidentified mercenaries. Those military personnel who are colluding with the Medvedev pharmaceutical company and complicit in the conspiracy do not dare to use precious satellites easily. After all, this company faces many challenges in the Bear Country. For example, many financial oligarchs became rich earlier than them, and their influence penetrated into the military earlier. Therefore, by the time Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company wanted to penetrate into the military, it was already too late. Too late, and it's not that simple. The man shook his head and said, "According to the employer, the other party is carrying a firearm, so he will not be killed by the zombies without firing a shot." The captain raised his head and looked around, but did not find Luo Guang and Jill hiding. He cursed his employer in his heart, while hiding behind the bunker and making a phone call. After hearing the words of the mercenary captain, Peter fell into thinking. He had originally thought about installing trackers on Luo Guang and the two of them, but there was no suitable person around him to carry out this task. Moreover, this plan was basically a temporary decision and was implemented immediately, so he had no way to prepare Ivan for tracking in advance. Knowing nothing about military theory, he quickly thought that after entering the infected area, he needed to shoot to kill the enemy, so he asked the mercenaries to follow the traces of battle and the sound of gunshots to hunt down the two men. However, this did not trouble Peter, who considered himself extremely smart. He replied, I gave them a map before setting off, with 2 investigation points marked on it, or you can go there to ambush in advance. I understand, is there any other way? The mercenary captain got no answer and immediately hung up the phone. Trash! The mercenary captain cursed in his heart. He regretted taking this mission. The method Peter gave was just gambling on luck and had no effect on the current situation at all. Moreover, the other party had told them before that they should move in secret and not alert the target. If they did not follow the opponent's route to kill the enemy, they could not guarantee that they would not fire a single shot throughout the process. Captain, I looked around and the target is not inside the corpse. Another more attentive mercenary came back to report the situation and guessed, although I don't know why, the zombies around are basically dead. Could it be that the other party discovered it, us? The mercenary captain was stunned, thinking that after ruling out all answers, this might be the correct answer. After observing the surroundings again, he said, it is indeed possible. They only dealt with the zombies that blocked the road along the way, but only this area was cleared. The mercenary who proposed the hypothesis nodded, and he continued, if this is true, they may hide or pass through the house. Luo Guang and the others hid behind the apartment. He had already used his mental power to tell Jill the content of Peter's call. However, those 2 locations were not in their plan. Their plan from beginning to end was to go to the Research Institute of Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company to confirm the attack of the beekeeper organization. It was not that they ignored the suffering of the citizens of Pskov and slacked off in the infected area without collecting the unknown virus samples. But according to their speed of progress, they could actually complete the task within an hour, while those investigation teams took at least 5 or 6 hours and lost contact in the end. The investigation team's progress was slow because they needed to wait for the helicopter to come and attract the zombies, or to avoid the wandering zombies, so their progress became very slow. If Luo Guang and his team completed the mission too quickly, it would arouse suspicion, so he set the mission time to about 2 to 3 hours based on the distance and the time required to collect samples. The mercenaries quickly confirmed a target and planned to start from a small alley. They sent 2 people to investigate. As long as they confirmed the traces of the other party killing zombies, they could naturally track the enemy again. However, before the 2 set off, the captain of the mercenaries found zombies around them and were surrounding them. These Harlan zombies were called by Luo Guang. The principle is similar to that of the night demon controlling the biters, night walkers, zombies deeply infected with the Harlan virus, to help protect the nest. Biters move slowly during the day, but there is a chance that they will turn into night walkers at night, and then they will move quickly. Luo Guang and Jill can stroll around and chat while solving the enemies around them, but these mercenaries can't do it. Seeing that the number of zombies far exceeded his own, the captain of the mercenaries did not immediately give the order to shoot, but led everyone to run to an apartment building with an open door, which was exactly the apartment building where Luo Guang and his team were hiding. As soon as the 2 mercenaries who ran last entered the door, their teammates on both sides closed the door. But before they had time to lock it, the night walkers outside directly hit the door, revealing a gap, so that the bolt could not be aligned with the lock. Seeing this, the 2 mercenaries who ran last immediately stepped forward to help, closed the door with force, and successfully locked it. The night walkers outside were still tirelessly hitting the door, and the Harlan zombies in the apartment were also alarmed and surrounded the mercenary team. Luo Guang and Jill did not take advantage of the situation, but directly climbed up 2 floors from the balcony of the apartment on the 3rd floor to the rooftop, then parkoured and jumped all the way, leaving this dangerous place and continuing to move towards their goals. Meow, make up for the leave I asked for yesterday. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 428. Luo Guang and his companion left the scene of the mercenary battle and soon came to the junction of the unknown virus and the Harlan virus. The battle between the zombies controlled by the 2 viruses at the scene had ended, and only the victorious party was left standing there. A type of zombie they had never seen appeared in front of them. They were either torn and rotten, with several small holes on the exposed parts of their bodies, or their skin was detached, and in severe cases, their entire heads were exposed. But no matter what the situation was, these zombies had a faint yellow light in their eyes and were gnawing on the fruits of victory, the bodies of the Harlan zombies. Are these unknown virus zombies so powerful? Jill, who had fought with the Harlan zombies, glanced around and found that the bodies lying on the ground were basically Harlan zombies that looked no different from normal people. Luo Guang planned to experience it himself. I'll go down and try it out, and you'll be responsible for observing and recording the situation. Jill nodded, but she didn't take out the camera because she knew that Luo Guang's battle later would not be something that normal people could do in the eyes of ordinary people. She didn't want her boyfriend to be caught and sliced for research. Luo Guang's shoes were specially made for covert operations, and they landed almost silently. The unknown virus zombies that had been silently gnawing at the corpses noticed him very keenly, and immediately gave up the food in their hands and mouths, stood up and looked at the fresh food. Without saying a word, he pulled out his invisible straight knife and R-9 pistol. In the blink of an eye, he crossed a distance of more than 10 meters and came in front of the zombies. Before the enemy could react, he was already standing behind the enemy, and the heads of the zombies slowly fell to the ground. The zombies basically fell to the ground after losing their heads, but there was only one zombie that did not fall down, but turned around and killed him. How could Luo Guang be defeated by the opponent? He turned around and kicked the enemy in the air with a whip kick, causing him to hit the lamppost and break his spine. Before he could wonder how the opponent could move without a head and accurately find his position, he saw the following scene. The unknown virus zombies that could still move without a head had fingernail-sized bumps on their bodies, and then worm-like creatures drilled out from the bumps and fell to the ground. Not only that, the zombies that fell down first also had the same signs, and some worms in their heads also ran out. It's a parasite. Luo Guang was a little surprised, but he felt more troubled. This kind of zombie with multiple parasites in its body is the most difficult to trouble, because after solving its host, you have to find a way to eliminate the parasites that run out of its body. Although he was complaining in his heart, his actions did not stop. After putting away his weapons, Luo Guang took down a car door without saying a word. Diamond suit, diamond suit, diamond suit. The car alarm sounded throughout the area, but he carefully found that the zombies that had not been knocked down did not divert their attention. Luo Guang first used the car door as a mosquito swatter, and directly slapped all the worms crawling on the ground into meat patties. After frying them, they can get 4 times the protein of beef. The remaining worm zombies quickly surrounded him, and he jumped back onto the roof of the car with the door removed. The worm zombies that couldn't stop the car collided with each other, revealing a flaw. Luo Guang took this opportunity to use the car door as a frisbee and threw it directly at the enemies. Who said that you can't cut meat without a sharp edge? After he threw the car door with all his strength, it directly split the worm zombies in two. It seems that the zombies with separated heads and bodies can still move before are just special cases. This time, the cut-off zombies fell directly to the ground, and the worms in their bodies left the host very decisively. Luo Guang removed 7 or 8 more car doors, and finally solved all the worm zombies in his sight and the worms in their bodies. He also unplugged the power of the cars that kept screaming and stopped the alarm. Jill jumped down from the rooftop, used the windowsill for cushioning, and landed, and joined Luo Guang. I have seen this kind of zombie with worm-type parasites in its body once in Africa. Luo Guang remembered that he had seen this kind of zombie in that African village when he first carried out the mission to capture Aida, but the worms in the body of that kind of zombie would be exposed and waved like tentacles, which was different from the ones in Peskov. Jill looked at her boyfriend with a puzzled look on her face and asked, "Have you seen it?" The BSAA database does not have any biochemical data related to worms. Luo Guang explained from the puzzlement in Jill's eyes, "When I found this thing in Africa, The BSAA had not yet been established, and the result I got from my own channels was that the parasite had been cleaned up, leaving only a few samples for research. He didn't think that Organization X would use biochemical viruses or these parasites to cooperate with Medvedev Pharmaceuticals or other pharmaceutical companies. Because Organization X has money and people, it doesn't need to rely on others at all. Although it was a while ago, Luo Guang could still remember the situation clearly, so he described the appearance of the zombies parasitized by African worms. He continued, "The weakness of the African worms is that they are afraid of fire, but the worm zombies here are not the same species in appearance, so we can't generalize. It's better to investigate carefully. Although worms are generally afraid of fire, the beast fungi in the Portland incident are not afraid of high-temperature flames, so there is no guarantee that there will not be a worm that is not afraid of fire." To be on the safe side, Luo Guang suggested, "I think the BSAA should raise the level of the Peskov biohazard incident. Treat it as a new type of biohazard. You should report the information to O'Brien first, and he will report it to the Bear Country. Parasites are much more adaptable to the environment than ordinary viruses, so they are more difficult to eliminate and spread more flexibly. This biohazard crisis can be said to be the debut of biohazard parasites. The Illuminati basically spread the parasites only within its own sphere of influence. Later, because the mission to rescue the president's daughter needed to be kept secret, not many people knew about the existence of the Plaka parasite. Other biohazards are viruses or fungi like the Portland incident. Whether it is the BSAA or the FBC, or the military and police who have undergone anti-biohazard training, they are all very unfamiliar with parasites. In short, it is because of lack of experience, so he wants O'Brien to raise the danger rating of this incident. As the level of the incident increases, the BSAA can also control more command power, thereby thwarting Peter's conspiracy. I understand, but Jill had to confirm one thing first, and said, "How should I tell O'Brien about the battle? The worm zombies have higher combat power than ordinary Harlan zombies." Luo Guang came to this conclusion based on the results of the battle between the two and the speed at which the enemy ran towards him. He continued, "These zombies are easy to deal with, but it is very inefficient to deal with the worms that emerge from the corpses with only conventional weapons. My gun skills and yours are very accurate, but ordinary soldiers cannot hit these worms that are about the same size as ordinary earthworms and move at a fast speed. It is best to have weapons such as flamethrowers to assist." The reason why Luo Guang dismantled the car door as a weapon was to use it as a fly swatter, turning a point attack into a surface attack. In the previous battle, he also tested the vitality of the worm and deliberately cut off the worm from the zombie with a straight knife. As a result, the half of the worm that fell on the ground did not stop moving and still attacked him vigorously. Jill had been watching the battle from a high place before, so he naturally understood what Luo Guang meant and took out his mobile phone. Luo Guang thought of something and added, "By the way, I will send the enemy's picture to O'Brien. You can talk to him later." He turned on the battle recorder when he was fighting just now, but this recorder was connected to the Red Emperor and had no local storage function. Jill did not turn on the recorder on her body because of Luo Guang. She is the minister, and only O'Brien can punish her for violations, but she is also one of the founders of BSAA, so he will probably only fine her salary. While making a call, Jill made a draft in her mind to facilitate reporting later. O'Brien answered the phone quickly. After briefly reporting the situation, she continued, "There are a large number of worm-type parasites in the worm zombies in Peskov City. They will not die because of the death of the host. We need to prepare weapons such as flamethrowers in advance to deal with this situation." Yes, that was sent to you by Luo Guang. This kind of worm may be ignored by the soldiers, resulting in the blockade being breached. Red Emperor worked very quickly. Before Jill finished talking, it had already cut the video and sent the photos. "Okay, got it." Jill hung up the phone and said to Luo Guang, O'Brien will communicate with the senior military officials of the Bear Country to raise the level of this crisis to the regional level. I hope our report will not be too late. The biochemical crisis level of BSAA is determined by the size of the infected area and the ability of the biochemical virus or other things to spread. Generally divided into village level, city level, regional level, national level, and world level. Below this large level, there are 10 small levels from 1 to 10. The larger the level, the more serious the situation. Now, after hearing Jill's report, O'Brien plans to upgrade the city level 4 directly to the regional level 8. If the transmission ability of this worm is too strong, then the regional level may be upgraded to level 10 again, which means that if we are not careful, this biochemical crisis may spread to the whole country. While Jill was contacting O'Brien to report the situation, Luo Guang was not idle either. The car alarm sound attracted many Harlan zombies before, and he was busy protecting Jill and stopping all those zombies. The Harlan zombies were easily solved, but before Luo Guang could catch his breath, more worm zombies appeared in the direction of the biochemical worm area on the other side, and 2 of them stood out in this group of zombies. These 2 special zombies are nearly 3 meters tall, and their right hands are a huge unicorn arm, and their overall length is basically the same as their body size. They look very similar to the Rage virus's impactors, but they are only similar to the impactors in that their single arm is huge. Luo Guang saw that the muscle structure on its Kirin arm was more like multiple arms woven together like a pigtail, so the other arm looked normal, unlike the Rage virus crashers, whose other arm became thin because the giant arm absorbed too much energy. But relatively speaking, because the Kirin arm was huge, this special zombie moved much slower than other zombies, and could not launch a fearless charge like the crashers, so it could only move sideways and drag the Kirin arm forward. There were no worms on this guy either, all hidden in his body. First, name this thing Tall Boy. Luo Guang gave this special zombie a nickname without saying anything, so that it would be easier to identify the target during the subsequent communication. After Jill finished the call, she immediately began to collect samples from the dead worms. She put away the test tubes, took out her pistol, and said, "I understand. Now the situation has changed. Should we leave here first and go back to regroup?" Because of Luo Guang, her body has become very strong, but she has not fought many boss-level enemies and has not fully tapped her potential. She has no accurate judgment on how strong she is for the time being. The glowing cyst on the tall man's upper arm may be the enemy's weakness. Luo Guang took out the R-9 pistol and shot. That's because when the tall man moved sideways, his unicorn arm was hidden behind him, and he also noticed the possible weakness of the other party because of the angle. Although the efficiency of using a pistol to deal with those worms is too low, it can still be used to attack weaknesses and solve worm zombies. At this time, the target of his shooting was not the weakness of the special zombies, but the ordinary worm zombies that were running over like bolt. Only less than 1% of the worms here still parasitize on the host and act after losing their heads, and the other zombies basically fell to the ground directly after losing their heads. The worms that drilled out of the host did not attack him as Luo Guang expected. Except for the 2 tall men who stepped on the corpse and continued to move forward, the worms that lost their hosts were gathering together. Luo Guang handed a bottle of blue pills to Jill. This is a newly developed anthelmintic antidote. Although Ben is dead, I don't know if he will be resurrected. Be careful. This anthelmintic antidote is made of blue and yellow acre herbs and other ingredients. It is a trial product of the GIMZ Institute, and he also added some ingredients. Jill put the bottle of medicine in her medical bag and said, "I don't know what those worms are doing. Let's kill those 2 tall men first." As soon as the voice fell, she and Luo Guang rushed out almost at the same time. The tall man roared, still maintaining the previous speed of movement, looking very clumsy. But just when Luo Guang and the others entered the attack range, the 2 special mutants used the unicorn arm to launch a sweeping attack at an incomprehensible speed. Jill moved flexibly, jumped forward to avoid the attack, kicked the tall man in the face, and flew backwards with the reaction force. At the same time, the pistol named Samurai Blade V roared in victory, and bullets poured out and shot into the glowing cyst. The tall man roared with pain, raised the unicorn arm and chased Jill, who had just landed, but Jill started moving as soon as she landed, staring at the enemy with her eyes, and replaced the magazine in her weapon. She dodged and counterattacked again, and then saw the glowing cyst shattered, and the entire unicorn arm broke directly and fell to the ground. Strangely, as soon as the unicorn arm broke, the tall man fell to the ground and lost his breath, just like losing the meaning of life, and no worms emerged from the monster. Jill looked at Luo Guang. Her boyfriend had already dealt with the enemy and was looking at the worms that were gathering with the corpses, thinking about something. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. The monster picture I found does not meet the requirements and cannot be inserted into the article meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 429. What are these worms doing? The air seemed to be filled with a dangerous atmosphere. Jill didn't care about the strangeness she found in the tall man. While asking questions, she changed the new magazine and fired. She would not just stand there and watch the other party mutate. Luo Guang took out an incendiary grenade, thought about it and put it away, then took out his gun and shot to cut the wires above the worm group. Incendiary grenades are very useful, but he is worried that after igniting those worms, the scattered worms will ignite the surrounding shops and cause a fire in the whole city, which would be a big sin. The city power supply is still working, and the Harlan zombies only broke the street light bulbs and did not cut the wires, so he planned to use electricity to electrocute the worms. The wires in Luo Guang's field of vision were all connected, but there was no reaction when the wires fell on the worms. The worms wrapped the corpses and began to merge and mutate. A huge insect sack soon appeared in front of the two. Jill was about to ask Luo Guang how to deal with it when he saw him walk into the hardware store next door, and then lightning appeared in the dark shop. A flash of lightning flashed in Jill's eyes, cutting through the dangerous atmosphere in the air and going straight to the worm sack. The moment the lightning hit the film, Jill saw the monster that was being bred inside, curled up like a baby, and it was hard to tell what it looked like. Luo Guang made the signature move of the super electromagnetic gun, holding up the straight knife and shooting lightning. In his other hand, he was holding various hardware products in the store and throwing them in front of the straight knife, using the magnetic field to shoot them out to increase the lethality. With a sound of pong, like a balloon bursting, the worm sack exploded, and the blood and acid inside splashed around with a fishy smell. Jill was well prepared and hid behind the car, not wanting to get stinky. Luo Guang took back the residual electric energy around the straight knife, and then walked out of the hardware store with a wrench. The curled-up monster completely ignored Jill's bullets and the wrench thrown by Luo Guang, and stood up. The 2- or 3-story-high body was covered with bone armor, and its humanoid appearance was like an ogre in a Western fantasy world, revealing a hideous face. The monster that Luo Guang temporarily called ogre had a large number of human heads fused above its bloody mouth. These heads had smart eyes and quickly locked onto Luo Guang and the other person, obviously becoming the ogre's observation system. Its arms and fingers were all made of human bodies, and they looked very crudely fused, as if someone had glued the corpses together tightly with glue. Looking at the behemoth in front of him, Luo Guang was not too worried, because the other party had a similar weakness to the tall man, a glowing cyst. He naturally discovered what Jill discovered from the tall mutant. The tall man's body did not fuse with the body parts, but his right arm did, and the cyst was right at the junction of the two. After just dealing with the tall man on his side, he turned his attention to the worm that was being fused. Now looking back, he found that the worms that fell out of the tall man's weak point that he had broken were motionless, so the worms in the tall man's body did not jump out to cause trouble like ordinary worm zombies. Although the ogre in front of him was made of corpses, similar cysts appeared on his shoulders, chest, back and other places, which means that as long as the weak point was completely broken, the ogre and the large group of worms in his body could be solved. The ogre began to charge forward and attack, and at the same time, the monster's big mouth and the mouth of the human head issued a weird roar that resounded throughout the city. The sound waves emitted by the huge roar forced Jill to cover her ears. Suddenly, her legs left the ground, and the ogre's fist appeared where she had just stood. With strong dynamic vision, she could clearly see that the corpse on the ogre's arm seemed to be still alive. The lightless eyes looked at her unwillingly, and his arms stretched forward with all his strength, and no sound came out of his slightly open mouth. She seemed to hear what the other party said. "Why are you still alive? Why is it not you who is here?" Luo Guang picked up Jill and dodged the enemy's suddenly accelerated attack, and said, "Can you land by yourself?" The attacks of the ogre continued to attack, leaving him no time to put down Jill, who was being carried by the princess. Jill came to her senses while aiming her gun to counterattack, and replied, "Wait for me to hit the enemy's stiffness, otherwise it will be too dangerous." "Okay, you fight back while listening to me." Luo Guang told Jill what the Red Emperor notified: "BasedonaMovie is about to arrive in Peacecoff City. I need you to take the sample back to Command BasedonaMovie, and at the same time apply for air support from the military of the Bear Country to deal with this big guy. The ogre only has the advantage of being large in size and having a thick blood bar. The fighter pilot must be happy to raise his hand to grab the attack quota when seeing such a big target. Moreover, Luo Guang is not inferior to the ogre alone, but with the weapons and equipment he brought in now, he can't explain how he defeated this 2- or 3-story high monster. So he planned to temporarily separate from Jill and work together to implement the new plan." Luo Guang jumped high to the balcony of a nearby building, and almost half a second later he jumped again to avoid the attack of the ogre. Jill also took advantage of this time to empty the magazine and hit the weak point behind the ogre. As he landed, he said, "The next steps, and I will stay here, and you announce to the public that I am missing and disconnected." "What?" Gil looked surprised and stopped changing the bullet in his hand. "I took the opportunity to go to the Peacecoff Research Institute to investigate." When Luo Guang said this, Jill understood the other party's plan. Ouch! After Jill emptied 3 magazines, the ogre finally paused its storm-like attack. Taking this opportunity, Gil said to Luo Guang, "Be careful yourself and pay attention to safety." Seeing Luo Guang nod, she immediately retreated to the blockade. The ogre looked at Gil, who was escaping. He didn't want to let the enemy go just like that. He touched his left arm to his chest and sank directly into it, as if he wanted to take out some big treasure. But before it could make the next move, Luo Guang's flying kick knocked the ogre to the ground. "Your enemy is me," he spoke loudly, successfully attracting the enemy's attention. The ogre roared again, and at the same time sprayed sour gastric juice from his mouth to launch a new round of attacks. At the command post of the blockade camp outside Peacecoff, Ivan once again received contact from his superiors. But this time the superior was not the previous one, but the Minister of Defense of the Bear Country. As his superiors revealed the information about BasedonaMovie, his expression became more solemn. While Ivan was writing down the requirements of the Minister of Defense, he was struggling with something in his mind. "Have you written it down? There is no room for failure in this mission." After the Minister of Defense said this, he was about to hang up the phone. "Wait, Minister, I have something to report to you." The other party did not hang up the phone, and Ivan told him what he and Peter had done. "I understand. Next, you only need to listen to the orders from the Ministry of National Defense and BasedonaMovie, and new troops will be sent to cooperate with the operation to solve this biological crisis incident. I will arrange for other people to do other things. Not only to cooperate with the operation, but also to conduct an inventory of soldiers related to Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company. Yes. Ivan hung up the phone and exhaled almost at the same time. Then he finally didn't have to look at Director Peter's face and could go all out to deal with the enemy. Adjutant, he shouted to the door. Our enemy is not only a biochemical virus, but also a parasite monster like an earthworm. The specific situation is unknown at the moment. We can only hope that the BSAA-2. Speaking of this, he suddenly thought of what Peter was going to do, and couldn't help but pray for the safety of Luo Guang and the two of them. Sir, the adjutant looked at Ivan, who suddenly stopped talking. Ivan came back to his senses and said, "First, let your men pay attention to that parasite, inform them about it, and let the citizens of Pskov know this, so that they can be prepared." Yes, the adjutant received the order and prepared to leave. Wait, where is Director Peter? In this situation, there are not many people he can trust, and the adjutant is one of them. The adjutant replied, "He just left the blockade, as if to pick up something." I understand. You go and do the work. In this case, it is not easy for Ivan to leave his post or have someone search and arrest Peter. After the adjutant left, he stood up and picked up his weapon from the corner of the command post. It was a scarred AK-74. Rather than sitting in the command post and scheming with others, he was better at and liked going to the front line to command operations. He took out the cleaning tools, disassembled the firearm, and started cleaning the firearm. Because he had a premonition that there would be a tough battle next. 20 minutes ago, Peter was anxiously waiting for news about the Vagrian mercenaries in the tent prepared for him by Ivan. The phone rang, and he originally thought it was news of the mercenaries' success, but he saw the phone number of his superior research director. After he answered the call, he was immediately scolded by his superior, "Idiot! How did you do it? That unknown virus is not a biochemical virus at all, but a parasite. This is just an accident. Minister Joseph, I don't know." "That's enough. Peter, you don't think that we don't know what you are doing at the Pskov Institute, do you?" Joseph interrupted the other party and said, "You used the company's resources to get benefits, and then you discussed cooperation with another force without telling us. Do you think we don't know? Although the force cooperating with Peter is stronger than that of Medvedev Pharmaceuticals, the people of the Bear Country did not grow up on a vegetarian diet and will not give up their interests because of this. It was also because the Pskov Research Institute was destroyed and its director Peter had little remaining use value that he had a showdown with Peter. Otherwise, according to the plan, when Peter leads the men who also betrayed the company to achieve research success, it will be the day when the company's secret forces clean up the Pskov Research Institute." Peter did more than that. As a pledge to cooperate with new forces, he used his own intelligence to find pioneering people in the military to cooperate in the name of Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company. He led the soldiers secretly to the Ice-Gulty crater in Quebec, Canada, and intercepted and killed the Canadian scientific expedition team there. He also killed the person who sold the information. It was precisely because people from the military were involved that Ivan's superiors ordered Ivan to cooperate with Peter. Peter's goal was not the scientific expedition itself, but the worms they found from an area 2,500 feet underground. He named it the devil worm. According to calculations and research, the formation time of this Bingulti crater is 1.4 million years ago. It is known as the Eye of Nunavik. The samples obtained from it are also millions of years old according to the test, so it is inferred that this creature comes from the universe. These are the intelligence obtained by the researchers of the scientific expedition team. After getting the worm samples and the research materials of the scientific expedition team, Peter took the research materials by plane to return home conveniently, while the military took the worm samples by sea and air, and met in Pskov City in 2 lines. As a result, due to the delay of the plane, he returned to the institute a day late, and the institute happened to have an accident before he came back. his men did not wear full coverage protective clothing when studying the dead demon worms. Under illegal operation, the demon worms were accidentally revived, causing a biochemical crisis in the institute. In the end, when the internal staff could not stop it, the disaster spread out of the institute, forming the current situation. Faced with the situation of losing the letter of surrender, Peter contacted potential cooperative forces, but the other party gave him another plan. As long as it was completed, the cooperation could continue. And this new plan is to deal with the two people from BSAA, so Peter's attitude changed after Luo Guang and the others came back after checking the blockade. Now facing Joseph's confession, Peter didn't pretend anymore and said, "Humph, since you have no ambition, don't blame me for finding a way out myself." Since the umbrella incident, Medvedev Pharmaceuticals has been keeping to itself, showing a conservative overall strategy, and voluntarily carried out virus research under the control of the Z government, intending to use biochemical viruses to manufacture superior products, form industrial advantages, and boost the domestic economy. This is too uncomfortable for the ambitious Peter, and it is not easy for him to change jobs as he controls a large amount of company intelligence and research data, so he can only resort to this last resort. Joseph said, "Humph, the company is different from what you see on the surface. And do you think you can escape our company's pursuit? Medvedev Pharmaceuticals is capital after all. If the upper level has no ambition, how can it grow and develop? Although they are not as big as the domestic oligarchs, they can join the Global Pharmaceutical Federation, which means that they are also one of the top 10 companies in the pharmaceutical industry." Peter's voice remained calm and said, "Since you know this and still choose to call me, it seems that you are very interested in the information in my hand. This is why the two sides are on the verge of a fight, but no one hangs up the phone on their own. Peter needs an organization to cover for him now that the matter has been exposed. After all, his letter of allegiance has not been submitted to the force that he has contacted, and the other party cannot save him for a while. If he falls into the hands of other organizations, he will be in big trouble." "That's right, but your chips are all in the research institute. Don't worry, as long as you can keep my current position and let me work in this blockade, I can naturally get the demon worm." Peter is very confident. Minister Joseph, "No, we have plenty of ways. If you want to survive, follow our plan, leave the camp first, and we will send someone to pick you up." Hearing this, Peter finally understood that the other party was looking for him not for his research materials and data on the demon worm, but to prevent himself from dragging down the company. But he is not the kind of person who will put his life in the hands of the other party, and he has another option to choose. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting. This illustration has a lot of restrictions, probably to adapt to mobile phones. The size is always wrong. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 430. In the sewers of Pskov, a team of 4 was standing guard. However, 3 of them were just sitting on the ground chatting and occasionally looking at the sewers. Their leader hung up the landline phone and said to the other 3, "Have you ever seen black things like earthworms or snakes? They are called worms." Without pictures, this description is easier for others to understand and remember. After all, not everyone has seen worms, so it is not enough to just tell the people below a noun. The 3 people who were chatting looked at each other, and one of them asked, "I haven't seen it. Is there anything special about that black thing?" The other 2 shook their heads and said they had never seen it. The team leader answered seriously, "The superiors said that in addition to the biochemical virus, this worm is also one of the sources of infection in this crisis. Let us be careful." Someone looked around and said, "Captain, it's too dark here. Even if those black things appear, it is difficult for us to find them. The superiors have arranged for people to send standing engineering lights and isolation nets with denser and finer meshes." The team leader continued, "We must remain vigilant during this period and don't relax. The superior's tone was very solemn, so he didn't dare to neglect it. It was not okay for a group of people to gather together and chat like before. The other three knew their captain very well, and immediately took their weapons and took their positions. They all turned on their headlights to illuminate the sewers that were originally only dimly lit. In order to save batteries before, they turned on their headlights in batches. But people's attention is limited. After 15 minutes, they couldn't help but remain silent. Seeing the captain dozing off, the clever boy seized the opportunity and said, "Captain, this is too boring, I want to doze off." It was already night, and it was easier to feel sleepy. The captain nodded and said, "Okay, then you can chat and move your hands and feet, but you can't look away." "Great," someone shouted happily. Another relatively quiet person moved his neck, and the light of his headlamp turned a circle as he twisted. He stopped, shone the headlamp on the sewer canal, and shouted, "Everyone, do you see that the water in the distance has become a lot darker?" The captain stood up and looked at the canal. He had never paid attention to the canal before, so he couldn't answer the other party's question for a while. The other two also controlled the direction of the headlamp. One said, "Thomas, are you seeing it wrong? The water in the stinky canal is smelly and black. Don't look at them now. They are fine. When they first came here, they were nauseated by the smell, but now they are used to it." But the clever guy in the team had a different opinion and said, "Captain, the worms mentioned above are black, right? Can they swim?" The captain was about to answer when he suddenly found that the black part of the canal water in front of him seemed to be constantly moving towards him. Without hesitation, he said directly, "Shoot, grenades ready." The clever guy was the first to react and shot at the black parts, while the captain pulled out the safety pin and threw the fragmentation grenade over the barbed wire. The sound of the grenade explosion continued to echo in the sewer. The team members hid behind the bunker, covering their ears, and waited until they felt a little better before looking out to observe the situation. The captain saw the worms that were blown up by the grenade and fell on the concrete ground on both sides of the canal, with wounds and blood all over their bodies, struggling, and immediately sounded the alarm here. The monitoring room responsible for monitoring the entire blockade line immediately called, "Did you find anything?" Although there are monitors here, the resolution is too low, and the environment is dim, so the person in charge of the monitoring room can't see their situation clearly at all, and psychological comfort is more meaningful. The captain was about to report the matter when he heard his teammates shooting wildly. Smart guy shouted, "Captain! There are too many worms. The barbed wire is just a decoration, and the isolation net under the canal should also be useless. You find a way to stop the worms from moving forward. If necessary, I allow you to blow up the sewer." In the monitoring room, Ivan suddenly appeared, took the intercom from the person in charge of the monitoring room, and gave orders to the people in the sewer. After hanging up the phone, the person in charge saluted Ivan, who suddenly appeared here. Ivan looked more like a soldier than a commander at this time. He wore a tactical vest, a full magazine, and an AK-74 assault rifle. Before he arranged the task, the alarm sounded again in the monitoring room, which meant that there was a crisis in other places. Ivan looked at the place where the wall was flashing red, which was also a temporary outpost in the sewer. He ordered the same order, and then he contacted to send someone to support. Alarms sounded one after another. The place where the accident happened was basically the sewer area, while the blockade on the ground was peaceful. The adjutant came to the monitoring room, looked at his superior, and said, "Commander, I have notified the worms. The helicopter has also set off to find the giant monster mentioned by the superior." Ivan nodded and replied, "The worms are attacking from the sewer area. Do you have any good ideas? We can only cut off the sewer area. I saw the recent weather forecast and there is no heavy rain. Let's do it this way. You go and arrange it." "Captain, Support is coming. Suddenly, a soldier ran into the monitoring room and reported the latest situation immediately after seeing Ivan. The army that was blocking the bridge found a large group of zombies coming towards them. They were T-virus zombies and other mutant monsters. The person in charge on the scene did not think these zombies were a threat, so he did not let anyone sound the alarm. He shouted directly, "Free shooting. Prioritize the fast runners." The fast runners are not just zombie dogs, so he did not limit the target type. Rightward arrow. At the water sample monitoring point by the bridge, two soldiers first looked up at the other side of the bridge, then looked down at the sampling inspector who was collecting samples, and said, "Hurry up, there is a fight up there. I don't know if it will affect us." The inspector nodded, collected the samples, stood up and was about to leave. Suddenly, his calf hurt, his leg twisted and he fell to the ground, and the box containing the samples was thrown out. Fortunately, one of the guards reacted quickly enough and let go of the weapon with the gun belt and caught the box. The other man breathed a sigh of relief. If the sample was bad, then he would have waited in vain. Then he walked over and said to the fallen sampling inspector, "Are you okay?" The sampling inspector turned around and sat on the ground, lifted up his trouser legs, checked his calf, and found a small hole. At the same time, the pain was spreading from the calf to the thigh. He was sweating profusely and soon couldn't help the severe pain and shouted. The two soldiers didn't know what happened. They were on duty outside and had not received any reports about the demon worms. After all, it was too time-consuming to notify one by one. Ivan's adjutant notified the officers at the next level, and then the other party notified his subordinates. So the two soldiers carried the guy who fainted in pain back to the medical room on the other side of the bridge blockade without knowing anything. The military doctor heard what happened from the two people and his face was solemn. He had just received the latest information that the demon worms could survive in the water. He told the other party the information that the two didn't know, and then said, "Be prepared for battle. He may have been infected." "Yes," one of them answered immediately. The military doctor undressed the man and used a scanner to scan the man's body from the wound upwards. The demon worms gave birth to their young while heading for the brain. When they reached the chest, the sample inspector's eyes suddenly opened, startling the two soldiers who were watching nervously. The two were stunned so that they could not react immediately to deal with the mutated sample inspector. The fresh worm zombie opened its mouth and tried to bounce up and bite the military doctor who was close at hand. The military doctor had expected this and had tied the man up so that he could not bite him. "Humph, little Kalamai, it's too early to bite your grandfather." The military doctor looked at him disdainfully, then looked at the two soldiers and said, "New recruits." The soldier who had reacted quickly before and received the sample box replied, "We just graduated from the recruit camp this year, and then we were assigned to the military camps around Pskov." "What should we do now?" another person asked nervously. The military doctor said, "You, the nervous guy, go find the commander and tell him that you were attacked by worms by the river and that the worms have spread to the river." That's why he looked so serious when he heard what the other person said before. When the man heard that he could leave, he immediately ran out to report the situation to his superiors. "Cooperate with me to destroy this." In the view of the military doctor, there was no need to leave this hidden danger, as there were plenty of them in Pskov. Jill was in a hurry and chose to return by the original route. Unlike what he had seen before, there were only 7 of these mercenaries left at this time, and they were covered in dust and looked very embarrassed. Seeing the mission target, the mercenaries raised their guns and shot without saying a word. Jill had already judged whether these mercenaries were enemies or friends, and she had anticipated the situation when she chose this route, so she quickly hid in the alley when she met them. She didn't dare to bet on the bulletproof performance of the cars on the roadside, and she could take the opportunity to escape by hiding in the alley. Seeing the other side's response, the mercenary captain immediately gave orders, "Dolphin, Octopus, cover, the others go up." Their team all wore headsets for internal communication, so there was no need to shout loudly to tell the enemy what they would do next. Everyone quickly took action and ran to the alley where the mission target hid. The other side was not a fool. He dared to fight back against so many people alone, so he must have run away at the first time. So he and others failed to solve the enemy when they met, and the next was a troublesome chase. The mercenary captain could only hope that the zombies in the city could stop the other side's pace. However, when they quickly broke into the alley, they did not find any trace of the mission target. Under Jill's gaze, these mercenaries went deep into the alley and ran to the street on the other side. She did not hide in places like the trash can in the alley, but directly used her excellent physical ability to jump and climb all the way to the roof of the house. After avoiding the enemy's pursuit, Jill did not land, and continued to jump on the rooftops of various buildings until she left the infected area of the Harlan virus. Then they ran all the way to the outside of the blockade line. Jill held up the BSAA flag, slowed down her pace, and walked towards the blockade line. The people who greeted Jill were not the soldiers of the Bear Country who had come with Luo Guang when she came in, but the first batch of BSAA soldiers who arrived. Minister, everyone looked at Jill who had just come out of the Devil's Cave unscathed with admiration and saluted. Jill breathed a sigh of relief. Although she knew that Peter would not dare to attack her openly, the situation just now was still very dangerous and prone to accidents. What's the situation? Why can't I contact the commander? There was a reason why she failed to inform Yvonne in advance that she was about to come out. A BSAA soldier named Stacy told what happened after Jill and Luo Guang separated. The most serious and urgent thing for Jill to know is that the scope of infection has expanded a lot. First, the sewer was in emergency, and then worm zombies appeared in the originally uninfected area, causing the bridge blockade to be attacked from both sides. Secondly, a new batch of troops sent by the Bear Country military has arrived in Pskov. The commander of the Pskov incident is now named Yevsky. The original commander Ivan was not removed from his post for investigation. Yevsky did not have time to distinguish among the soldiers who were good and bad, who received the company's money, and who betrayed the motherland. He gave Ivan and his former commanders a chance to prove themselves, to stop the further spread of the demon worms on the front line and save the citizens of Pskov. The words sounded good, but Ivan knew that the other party wanted him and others to be the death squad, but they did not escape, and the other soldiers did the same. Because many of these people were born in Pskov or surrounding areas, and many of their relatives and friends still live here. Because there were only a few lackeys who cooperated with Medvedev Pharmaceutical Company in Ivan's team, and there were more passionate soldiers in this team. So Ivan and the adjutant decided to split into two groups. Ivan went to the original uninfected area of Pskov to eliminate the worm zombies that suddenly appeared there. The adjutant took the team and the cement trucks that could be found, as well as various building materials, to the various exits of the sewer. They planned to use cement stones to directly block the sewer to inhibit the spread of worms. At the same time, in order to prevent Medvedev Pharmaceuticals from intervening in this incident again, Yevsky changed the original communication contact information, so Jill could not contact Ivan. After listening to Stacy's brief explanation, Jill replied, "Did the military give any orders to BSAA? Did the soldiers of the original blockade follow Ivan to perform the mission?" The other party replied, "Yes, and then Commander Yevsky asked us to replace the people on this blockade, and the new troops he brought went to block the other side of the city. In addition, he suspected that the appearance of worm zombies in the uninfected area might be related to the water treatment plant. The water treatment plant did not know when it lost contact, so it also sent people to investigate." Jill didn't find it strange that his subordinates knew the current situation, because the military of the Bear Country would definitely explain to BSAA, but did Yevsky know all the plans? Jill expressed her doubts, and Stacy replied, "This is what Commander Yevsky asked us to tell you specifically." Yevsky had just arrived here and had not taken over the command, but the situation changed. Therefore, he made a quick decision and issued many orders, determined to control the situation. So he did not specifically try to contact Jill. After all, she was in the infected area at that time, and it was easy to cause problems if he contacted her rashly. This matter was not as urgent as other things. In the end, Yevsky asked the BSAA people to replace the soldiers of the original ground blockade line and guard the only entrance and exit. If the other minister left the city alive, he would be able to meet him and learn the latest situation from Stacy, so that he could save time to explain it later. By the way, Minister, the commander said that if you come back, go to the camp to discuss the next plan with him immediately. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting me out.